Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. And warm and friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seeps with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now part of the Beats and Family podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Tristan Freeman of Bus and Brackets. We're going to be taking a look at what we've all been seeing in the ACC, the SEC, the Atlantic 10, some of the teams that are coming up on his radar, some of the teams that he's starting to sour on in general. So we're going to have some good, clean family fun chatting with him in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways. We'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. Then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter /X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Ranked teams were able to do a solid job straight up, not so much against the spread though, as you had Iowa State, and one of these ranked teams had to get the cover. They absolutely get the job done against Kansas, 74-57, but more striking with Kansas, they still have only played one over this year. 1 over to 15 unders. Defense was relatively solid in this one, as for Iowa State, they were able to get 25 points out of Curtis Jones. He stepped up in a big way as Milan Mimosilovic out of the fold in this one. Curtis Jones typically comes in off the bench, and for Kansas, they went 4 of 11 at the free throw line. Lost the turnover battle by a count of 17-13. They lost the rebound battle as well, 43-33. Joshua Jefferson, 10 points, 12 boards down low for Iowa State, and Hunter Dickinson, 6 points, 8 rebounds, less than savory effort out of him. At Zeke Mayo had 17 points to lead the way for Kansas. You saw Utah State in the late night game fall to UNLV 65-62. The running Rebels get the job done at home despite the fact that they only shoot 6 of 25 from 3-point. Utah State was 10 of 26 from the outside, but they lost the turnover battle 12-7. They lose the rebound battle as well, 37-34. As for UNLV, Jalen Hill was able to step up, 15 points, 8 rebounds, former starter over at Oklahoma. And then Julian Rashwain, he went 4 of 10 from 3, so the rest of the team outside of him went 2 of 15 from 3-point range. But also for Utah State, I've been looking at this a little bit more for them, and it came up here. They went 8 of 15 at the free throw line, so a little bit of a less than tremendous effort out there. For Penn State, no win, but they do get the cover against Michigan State, this by kind of 90-85, as we've been seeing a lot of overs, by the way, in Big Ten play recently. And for this Michigan State team, they continue to be rough from 3-point range. They only go 6 of 23 from 3-point range, but they still get the win because they were able to do a nice job dominating down low. They win that rebound battle 36-32. They also were able to do a nice job winning that turnover battle by a count of 14-10, as Jaden Akins was able to supply the team with 16 points, and Frankie Fiddler, he was able to throw in their 18 points of his own. This is a Michigan State team that in a conference that has been full of over teams, they have just 7 overs to 10 unders, so they've been bucking that trend just a little bit. But for Penn State, they were able to remain lively thanks to Ace Baldwin being able to give this team 20 points. So rock solid effort out there. It has been a rock solid year for Georgia thus far, both straight up and against the spread, but not on this night, as Tennessee was able to put the clamps down 74-56 the final. As for Tennessee now 11-6 against the spread. Georgia just signed an 8 against the spread, but that said, with this Tennessee team, what they did a nice job of was being able to generate turnovers, winning that turnover battle 19-10. They also win the rebound battle by a count of 35-29. Sakai Ziegler, the point guard, 6 steals, 7 assists, 16 points. Really did a nice job leading the way there. And Asa Newell, the star freshman for Georgia, he was able to supply the team with 13 points in this one. For Purdue, it looked like they might be on upset alert against Washington. They were down 8 points at the half, and then Washington made like your buddy at the bar, and they could not close. For Purdue, 69-56. 58 the final. They're just their second under in Big Ten play, by the way, but they completely demolished Washington in the second half. As for Washington, they go 9 of 22 from three-point range. They lose a turnover battle, though, 17-11, and this is not a Purdue team that generates a bunch of turnovers, but Trey Kaufman-Renn was able to supply the team with 19 points, 6 rebounds. Yeah, Braden Smith give you just what he is always able to give you, just a stat sheet stuffer, 5 assists, 5 steals, 6 rebounds, 17 points in this one, and Purdue only goes 3 of 13 from three-point range, so they find a way to persevere, get the job done out there. For Houston, if you took the opener of minus 15.5 they got there, on the close of more like minus 16.5, minus 17, not so much, 70-54 the final. If you had the over in this game, my gosh, these two teams had a combined 11 points in the final 7 minutes and change of this game, as West Virginia actually goes 9 of 22 from 3. You had Javon Small do all that he could, 13 points, 8 assists, but it was too small in this game for West Virginia. As for West Virginia, they lose that battle on the glass 30-23. They lose the turnover battle 12-7, and you had another big game, 22 points out of Jawan Roberts in this one. LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, they combined for 32 points, and they combined to go a nice 8 of 18 from three-point range. Houston right now shooting north of 41% as a collective from three-point range. They do find a way to persevere and get the job done. So does your top cover team in all of college basketball. St. Bonaventure now 14-3 against the spread. It was a little bit hairy at the late end of this one, but they do find a way to get that cover against Richmond. This by a count of 63-49. They close in a lot of places about a minus 13.5 point favorite. And for Richmond, they just could not find the bottom of the basket as this team goes 8 of 27 from three-point range. For Richmond, they turn the ball over just 8 times in this one, but they lose their rebound battle 30-23 as St. Bonaventure really just sucked the life out of this game, playing super slow. Jonah Hinton, he was hitting it hard. He was giving you 19 points, 5 of 10 from three-point range, so the Bonnies do find a way to be able to get the job done out there, and they maintain the best against the spread mark in all of college basketball. Now, if you look at the worst against the spread mark in all of college basketball, you're going to have both of those teams actually in action on Thursday. Minnesota and Grand Canyon, both 3-12 against the spread, so that has been very much less than tremendous. And then Sam Houston State, also in that regard, they have not been too good against the spread, but this has also been another one of those teams that just has not been able to get a lot going against the spread, and they did not get a lot going last night, as you did have Loyola Chicago get the job done on the money line against Rhode Island by a count of 81-77. Problem is, they got seemed up to being a 4.5 point favorite, and they are now Loyola Chicago is 4-12 against the spread. By the way, UNLV with that cover now 4-11-1 against the spread, so it's been a less than savory season for them as well. Richmond too, who didn't cover against St. Bonaventure, 5-12 against the spread. So we've already mentioned some of the non-cover teams, but I said for Rhode Island, they go just 6-23 from three-point range in this one, but they win that rebound battle 36-29, and Loyola Chicago actually wins the turnover battle by a count of 12-5, but just have not been able to get a lot going with regards to the defensive effort like we've seen in past years. And this was a bad effort from Dayton. They were a pretty sizable, about 7.5 point favorite against George Mason, and they lose outright. This by a count of 67-59, and they were actually down 19 points with about 4 minutes and change remaining. Made it a little bit more respectable with Nate Santos throwing in their 20 points, but that was a less than tremendous effort, and we just had some wild finishes. UMass versus Fordham goes to triple overtime, and if you ever get an under in a triple overtime game, I salute you. 120-118 the final in this one. Like, my goodness gracious. This game just went absolutely harebrained and just crazy, as in this game you had a combined, I'm not even kidding when I say this, 122 free throws attempted. And for Fordham, they go 48 of 65 at the free throw line. Jackie Johnson goes out for 36 points. He only had 8 made free throws, as you had a 14 of 16 free throw shooting performance from Yusuf Metter. And then for UMass, you had Rasul Diggins go out for 46 points in this one, and it was not enough. So that was harebrained. That was crazy. And we had a few triple overtime games in college basketball. We had a few double overtime games in college basketball. Winthrop over Charleston Southern, 102-97. That's a game that went to triple overtime. As for Charleston Southern, they went 5 of 26 from three-point range, but 40 of 53 at the free throw line. You had a grand total of 66 fouls in this game, as Nate Johnson was able to provide Winthrop with 28 points, 30 points from R.J. Johnson. So that was another one of those just rambunctious, crazy games. You also had another 2 overtime game between Fort Wayne and Wright State, 120-113. Hopefully you didn't have the under in this one, as for Fort Wayne, they go 16 of 33 from 3. Wright State, 12 of 32 from the outside. And for Wright State, you had 3 different guys get to at least 23 points, including having off the bench 23 points out of Jack Dombia, who also gave you 13 rebounds. And for Fort Wayne, how about having 30 points out of Jalen Johnson? So that was another one of those wild games, and you saw this one as well happen. Samford got the win, but no cover against Mercer, 75-74. Mercer was inbounding the ball behind their own basket with less than 2 seconds remaining, and they managed to turn the ball over foul. Samford gets 1 of 2, and then they win the game. So that was pretty insane. And what else has been insane has been how insane TCU has been at not being able to cover numbers, as they do fall in this one to Utah by kind of 73-65, as for our good friends at TCU, not a profitable season thus far. Against the spread, they're just 5-11 for Utah. They shoot just 6 of 21 from 3-point range, but they did a nice job being able to find a way to get to the free throw line, as TCU went 10 of 21 at the free throw line. Nobody to blame but themselves for the loss. Utah actually loses their turnover battle 13-8, but they win the rebound battle 41-35. Been rough without Frankie Collins for TCU, and that'll probably be the case moving forward. And Indiana State, the Sycamores have been one of your top over teams. They played another over on Wednesday, as they just completely gave it up. 13 overs to 3 unders for Indiana State this far this season, as they lose 118-65 against Bradley. An absolute blowtorching. 16 of 38 from 3-point range for Bradley. The Braves had 5 different guys in double figures, and Indiana State looked like poop de la poop. They lose the turnover battle by a count of 17-8. They lose the rebound battle 43-29. They might want to take that tape, bury it in a time capsule, and never dig it back up, because that was not great. This game also went to double overtime, as UIC finds a way to get the job done 97-93 in 2 overtimes against Marist State. UIC has been a really interesting team, by the way, as they've been able to make you some money on the overs as well. 9 overs to 6 unders, and Bradley, getting back to them, 11 overs to 6 unders, but for this UIC group, they go 9 of 22 from 3-point range. They went 18 of 25 at the free throw line, and they lose the turnover battle 20-12. They lose a rebound battle 41-38, yet they come out on top because they were just able to hit 55.5% of their shots. Murray State brick after brick for them. So that was another one of those harebrained, crazy double overtime games. And what else has been harebrained and crazy? How about what South Alabama has been able to do thus far this season? They are looking like the best team, in my opinion, out there in the Sun Belt. They get the win, and in a lot of cases, they got the cover. They were between about a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. They do get a win by kind of 75-62 over Southern Miss, and now they're 11-5 against the spread. And when it comes to Southern Miss, 7-9 against the spread, and it's not been so savory for them. What has been quite savory, though, Illinois State, in the way that they've been able to cover numbers. They get another cover against Drake, 66-62. They fall in that one, but now they are 12-5 against the spread. Going back to UIC, they are now 11-4 against the spread, so they've been another nice cover team. But for this Illinois State team, they've been able to shoot it quite well from 3-point range. Drake is just a team that's going to bottle you up a little bit more in general. They go 6 of 21 from 3, and Drake bailed out by their 3-point shooting on this night, 11 of 23 from 3, as Drake actually loses the turnover battle 9-6. So that was a rather interesting game, to say the least. And then if you're looking at ACC play, it has been, shall we say, all over the place thus far this season, and a team that just has not been able to cash a lot of tickets for you has been NC State. As NC State, they do find a way to be able to hang in there against Virginia Tech, but they fall by a count of 79-76. NC State had all the momentum in this game. They were up 14 points with about halfway gone by in the second half. As a matter of fact, they were up 11 points, 71-60, with 6 minutes and change remaining, and then they make like your buddy at the bar, and they cannot close. As for NC State, 8 of 19 from 3-point range. Virginia Tech goes 11 of 22 from 3. They all of a sudden have just gotten super hot with their offense over the last 2 or so games, dating back to that game against Cal, as Toby DeWall, 22 points, 11 rebounds. So that game was rather interesting. Florida State has actually been a relatively good cover team for you, though. 11-6 against the spread. They take down Pittsburgh 82-70, and then Pittsburgh apparently started up a little bit of a brawl after the game. I don't know if it was with fans or something, but that's less than tremendous. You might be seeing some suspensions there, but combined 32 turnovers in this game. But the top scorer in this game, Jameer Watkins, 26 points for Florida State. He found a way to be able to get it done for them, and then also being able to get it done against the spread is Virginia. They're still just 6-11 against the spread, but they hold in there against SMU 54-52 in this rock fight. SMU gets a win on the road, but they do not cover the right around 6 or so point number. And for Virginia, 4 of 26 from three-point range, but off the bench, you had 11 points and 15 rebounds out of Blake Buchanan, so that made things a little bit better for you. And then also out there in ACC play, Wake Forest seems to be picking up a little bit of steam, win and cover against Stanford, this by a count of 80-67, so we'll see what happens there. In North Carolina, all over Cal in this one. You've been starting to see a few unders from this North Carolina team, by the way. They win by a count of 79-53. As for Cal, 3 of 25 from three-point range. North Carolina wins that rebound battle by a count of 45-33, as you had Mr. Ian Jackson be able to give the team 20 points in that one. So that was a very fascinating game, to say the least. And if you're looking at the SEC as well, Vanderbilt a win but no cover. They win on their home floor by a count of 66-63 against South Carolina, but South Carolina catching double figures. They're able to get the cover there. And for Texas, it has been an all-over-the-place sort of season for them, but they go on the road, and in the Old Red River shootout, they get the job done 77-73 against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they start out the year 13-0, and now they have lost 4 straight games. So that's less than tremendous, as Oklahoma 5 of 16 from three-point range, and they lost the turnover battle 18-15. A little bit of a sloppy sort of game there. Texas has been up and down against the spread, to say the least, as far this season, but they're starting to be able to put some covers together. This is a Texas team that now against the spread, they're clocking in at 9-7, and for Oklahoma, now 7-9 against the spread. So they've been one of the very few teams out there in the SEC that hasn't been cashing a lot of tickets, but what has been cashing for you recently have been some of these underdogs, as underdogs overall this season in college basketball, hitting at a clip of about 50.6%, 1,427, 1,392, and 40 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs and unders are about as 50-50 as it gets. 1,409 overs to 1,407 unders. And if you look at just the last 7 days in college basketball, 166 overs, 167 unders. Meanwhile, the underdogs hitting at about 50.7% over the last 7 days. 170, 165, and 3 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now. That's what we all got on Wednesday. Now let's take a look at the entire landscape of this great sport with our good friend Tristan Freeman of Bustin' Brackets. Next, right here on Let's Go Suits with myself, Grady Peterson, now of our Houston Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Let's Go Suits with myself, Grady Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Tristan Freeman aboard. He does an absolutely tremendous job over at Bustin' Brackets. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's been dialed in on everything, really ever since the Nets were cut down a season ago. He does a great job all 12 months out of the year. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at HoopsNut351 all together. And Tristan, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Tristan. And Tristan, just first things first, in terms of this great sport of college basketball, what have been some of your biggest takeaways from what we've seen in conference play over the last few weeks? Because it has been very interesting what we've been seeing, and I feel like it's been very fascinating with regards to these conference games out there in the Big 12 and the SEC specifically, just because these have been two very dominant conferences, and these have been two conferences just loaded with, shall we say, some of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, so far, it doesn't matter whether it's on the road or at home. A lot of these games are coming down to wire, and teams are finding ways to win at any place. And there's a lot of even level talent. I think that's the one thing that we've all been waiting for after a lot of the non-con games, where there's sort of teams who are simply superior than their bye-game opposition. Now you're seeing teams who, can match up with each other, and that's what you're getting so far. And there might be a couple of teams that are clearly more dominant than the others, such as, Duke in the ACC, and then obviously a team like Gonzaga in WCC. But for the most part, a lot of these teams are vulnerable. We're just a couple of weeks in, and most of the conferences already either has one or fewer teams without a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been so interesting what we've been seeing out there in the ACC, SEC, the Big 12 as well. But how about the ACC, which is your main beat out there in the lovely city of Pittsburgh? As Duke has certainly been a dominant team this far. They've been able to get the job done at pretty much every turn in conference play. But outside of that, it just feels like it's a big, giant mismatch of teams, albeit we're doing this before the Pittsburgh versus Florida State game on Wednesday. But just what have you seen out of this conference? Because it feels like outside of Duke, there's just no sure things in this conference.
Yeah, I think if you want to ask the question of how big is the bottom tier in there, I think you could probably go up the 8, 9, or 10 deep. There's clearly a lot of teams who just don't really have a chance when they go up against teams at the top. But yeah, if you're looking at who fits in the top tier with Duke, Louisville has to have the number 2 spot considering they're coming off wins over Clemson and Pitt. Then Clemson is up there as well. And don't look now, but Wake Forest is quietly 4-1 in league play. And they've had a change in lineup with Tyler Johnson now out of the doghouse and fully into rotation and start lineup. So they could be a contender as well. And while it hasn't been pretty at times, North Carolina is also 4-1 and sort of keeping themselves on the positive side of the bubble.
And how much do you think it's just been a case where you were talking about that bottom tier being so big for the ACC, that really being the main crux of things for this conference? Because I take a look at North Carolina, I don't think that they're a terrible team. Clemson, Pittsburgh are teams I think have some promise. Heck, I think that Florida State has been able to overachieve a little bit this year as well. But some of these teams like Boston College having themselves a miserable year. You're back to having so many of those teams, sans SMU, that have come into the conference. They haven't necessarily been able to impress too much, though. Stanford has been relatively okay this season, but it just feels like those bottom teams in the ACC, where we always talk about it year in and year out, they need to avoid those bad losses. Not only have they taken those bad losses this year, they've taken more bad losses than I can remember in past years.
Yeah, the biggest problem in the ACC is that you have 8 teams who are out of the net ranking of top 100. So, and you have some teams like Miami and Boston College who right now will be considered quad 4 road games. That's how down they are. And these are teams that still have talent. If you slip up, then it could literally single-handedly decimate your resume, whereas in the Big 12 and SEC, and even, in the Big 10 outside of Minnesota, you can lose on the road at even the quote-unquote bad teams, and the worst is just a quad 2 loss. These teams are so far, none of the ACC, tournament contenders have suffered a bad loss, but we saw it with North Carolina, who needed a 4-point play to get past Notre Dame. It's going to be coming, and especially on the road, it's going to be tough, and we'll see how many of them can avoid those landmines, but there's truly a lot of landmines left for these teams.
No doubt about it, as Tristan Freeman, who does such great work over at Boston Brackets, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I was talking a little bit before about the top-heavy nature of college basketball right now with the SEC, the Big 12, and I would throw in there the Big 10 as really 3 super dominant conferences. How much do you think that has hurt this year some of these mid-major teams? Because you're out there in Pittsburgh, you cover Duquesne, and the Atlantic 10, I feel like it's had a relatively solid year, but they're not in contention for too many at-large bids to the NCAA tournaments. Sans like your Daytons, your VCUs, perhaps Rhode Island could get in there, but that's on the fritz a little bit more for them as well. And it just feels like the mid-majors this year are having a little bit more of a down year for having teams that could contend for an at-large bid.
Yeah, I think when you look, in terms of the 1-bid leagues, were there any, elite mid-majors that had a shot? Like UC Irvine was a team that could have been, McNeese State or Grand Canyon, but those teams, lost too much in the non-con. But you mentioned the A10, and look, it's more of their issue as to what happened. I mean, just in the first 2 weeks, Rhode Island loses at Duquesne. St. Bonaventure loses at home to LaSalle, quad 4 loss. Dayton probably used up all of its goodwill from the non-con campaign by losing to UMass of all teams, and even GW. You can say that the high majors are getting all the bids, but they're not losing these bad games. They're not losing the quad 4 opposition. So that's more of a A10 thing, beating each other up. Because so far, the Mountain West hasn't had that issue. Their teams, Boise, Utah State, New Mexico, they're beating the teams they're supposed to. And the A10 is a very competitive league from top to bottom, but it hurts the league play because there's just a lot more opportunities for bad losses and not as many quality wins as you can get.
No question about it. They have been very much hurt with that regard, and it has been so interesting to take a look at this season. As Tristan Freeman, who does absolutely amazing work over at Boston Brackets, he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're doing this ahead of the Thursday games. And one of the teams that has been, shall we say, outside of a power conference that has been rise up has been Memphis. They are right now 13-3. They've gotten the job done against a few power conference teams. What have you made out of both they and the American? Because I find the American to be such an interesting conference where typically you have like 1 or 2 teams that are able to contend for an at-large bid. But other than Memphis, this has been an entire conference that, in my opinion, is underwhelmed quite a bit with teams like UAB, teams like Temple, and other teams like Florida Atlantic just not being able to hold up their end of the bargain, unlike in past years.
One joke that went on in non-conference was just how many quad 4 losses the AAC was taking. A lot of their potential contenders, UAB and FAU in particular, had multiple awful losses that took them out of picture early on. So it's clearly about Memphis, who had a scare against both North Texas and even ECU. So clearly teams are giving it all, and Memphis has to be careful that they don't lose too many league games to sort of hurt their, tremendous non-con resume. But there's still good talent in this league. I mean, Temple with Jamal Mashburn is going to be a threat. South Florida's had a good start to league play. Rice has been a nice surprise, and UAB still has, probably the second best player in the league in Yaxel Lundenberg. So it'll still be interesting to see who ends up being the second best team, but obviously it's Memphis's to lose. But even they have to be careful going on the road because they're truly going to be every other team's Super Bowl this year trying to knock them off.
Yeah, no question about it. It has been a rough state of affairs right now for the American, but Memphis, they've been able to rise up. They've been able to have themselves a relatively rock-solid season, and we're going to be seeing a lot of those mid-major teams on display on Thursdays. I believe we've only got 3 teams that are ranked. They're going to be doing battle, as Gonzaga is one of those teams, and I think that they're in an interesting spot because they're where they are time and time again. They lost a few games that you probably wouldn't have wanted them to in non-conference play, albeit against good competition. But like that game against Kentucky where they led by 15-plus points, you'd love to see them be able to get the job done. They did not. But I think that they're still one of the more fascinating teams in the country because I look outside the top 5, top 10. I still think that they're one of the best contenders, but it feels like we've seen, for lack of a better term, the best of times and worst of times with them, and they're not going to have an opportunity to prove themselves until March, whereas last year they actually had that game against Kentucky in Rupp Arena that I would argue benefited them down the stretch.
Yeah, that game, saved their at-large hope. So it was, perfectly scheduled. This year, they're not in nearly as much trouble when it comes to making a tournament. And there's still a couple of decent games that they have that should test them, particularly going on the road against St. Mary's, Wazoo, and San Francisco. But they show clearly that, their offense, even though they're still number one and they can score on anyone, it can get stopped. And we saw that with UConn and UCLA. So even if they do go on a winning streak, I think there will still always be concerns about, what the ceiling is for this kind of team. But they never got blown out. They never really looked awful and was in every game that they ended up losing. So if you still think that they're a team that can win it all, I mean, maybe, although I don't know how they'll do against, the likes of Duke and Auburn, but they're still just as much a contender as they have been in the past, and I don't think that's going to change no matter what happens in league play.
No doubt about it. I think that they're going to be a fascinating team to watch moving forward, as we've got Tristan Freeman, who does such great work over at Bustin' Brackets, joining me on Coast to Coast Soups. And just as we've been looking at the last few weeks, as conference play has really been getting started up, are there a few teams that you're starting to feel a little bit more bullish/bearish on? It can be from any conference. It can be from just anywhere, East Coast, West Coast, what have you. Is there any teams that you're starting to feel just a little bit better about?
I think the Baylor Bears were a team that, had a couple of really, rough non-conference results, but they've sort of found their stride to start league play. Arizona as well, a team who's 4-0. Plus, I think some of the preseason contenders in the Big 12 are playing better. Teams that I'm less high on, I think obviously Rutgers, even though they got a nice win over a UCLA team that sort of in free fall, I still don't think that they have enough to make the tournament. And then Ohio State is a team that, they've had opportunities to get wins. I think they're talented enough to beat just about anyone in league play, but they just have these moments, including when they gave up the 18-point lead to Pitt in the non-con, where they just, really, really struggle on the defensive end and can let anyone score on them. And if they don't shore that up, they're going to continue to lose more games in league play. I still think that they're a tournament team, but maybe one that ends lower in the standings compared to what their talent says.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that they're going to be an interesting team to watch moving forward. We're going to have a lot of fascinating teams in terms of mid-major ranks. They're going to be going down on Thursday as well. And is there a team or two with regards to more of these mid-major conferences that we should be keeping our eyes on? Because we've seen quite a few surprises, like Old Dominion being tied atop the Sun Belt going into what we're seeing this week. That's something I certainly did not see coming. Omaha has been a team that has been able to rise up a little bit as well. You have some of your same olds like McNeese, what have you. But is there a team or two out there in the mid-major ranks that you're starting to take a little bit of a liking to as well?
Yeah, if you look at the CAA, one team that never is in the top tier is William & Mary, a team that struggled the last few years, but they're the last unbeaten team in league play at 4-0, and getting the coach Earl from Cornell has really helped them offensively, and they're a team that could be a legitimate threat to Charleston for the conference crown. And then obviously McNeese State is going to be the heavy favorite in the South Bend Conference. But once again, Texas A&M, of course, Corpus Christi, even with new players and a new coaching staff, they still are a contender. And it's surprising because Stephen F. Austin, who used to run the conference before they went to the WAC a couple years ago, they've returned but only 1-5 in league play. That's a surprising result, but don't be surprised if the Islanders are once again the biggest threat to the Cowboys in winning that conference title.
Yep, and I've actually been liking what I've been seeing out of Lamar and Incarnate Word as well, and to your point, Stephen F. Austin, they're shooting less than 60% at the free throw line. They're turning the ball over 20 times per game. They've made me a lot of money with regards to the unders thus far this season, so that has been something that has been very good, but not quite as good as getting you on this podcast, Tristan, as you do amazing work over at Butts and Brackets. You're one of the best at being able to gauge this sport all 12 months out of the year. Let the good people at home know it's on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, you can follow me at HoopsNut351 on Twitter/X and also at Bust and Brackets. And we're going to be getting ready to preview not only the rest of the week, but have a couple of conference rankings coming out soon as well.
That's what we love to hear, as Tristan does such a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to Tristan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis out of a game on the betting board for this College Basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Tristan Freeman, who does such amazing work over at Bus and Brackets. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such good insights. Did so once again today, so a big thanks to Tristan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the Rowdy recap.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first. The extra games have 6 digits on there. This is going to involve the America East, the NEC, the Atlantic Sun. If we've got any Big South action, if we've got anything that's happening out there in the MEAC or the SWAC, those are going to be the games that are going to be at the bottom as well. So, and will set us up for some good, clean family fun. And we start off with a game that I'm going to be writing up, 761-762 on the card. It is Stony Brook, and they're on the road against Delaware. And Delaware does find themselves as a favorite of 10.5 to 11 points. 152 is the total, and I made my total 151.5. I'm in on the under, but I wrote up here Delaware laying the number. Now, Stony Brook 350th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It has not been great to say the least, and Delaware has been a top 75 unit in terms of total possessions per game. Now, if you do have pause with Delaware, they are not a good rebounding team. They are 336th in the country. With this regard, Stony Brook, they're not doing an amazing job themselves. They're hovering right around about 270th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Stony Brook lost pretty much 5 out of their top 6 scores from seasons ago, so they've been looking at Joe Octave, CJ Luster in the backcourt, and Luster has shown with his 3-point shooting percentage at 41%, but he is pretty much the only guy on the roster that shoots above 33.5% from 3-point range. It's a Stony Brook unit that has been able to get Octave going for about 13 points, 5 boards, good versatility there, and Andre 3000 Stotty has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but this is a team that's just given up from 3-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 36% from 3-point range, and that's where this Delaware team really makes their hay. This has been a unit that has been in the top 40 in terms of 3-point shooting percentage, as you've got 3 of your top 4 scorers shooting at least 40% from 3, all 4 shooting at least 37.5% from the outside. Niles Lane throws in their 14 points, a steal and a half. He's been able to shoot it well from 3, and John Camden, 17 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists, 44% 3-point shooting, as a little bit of a 6'7", 6'8" combo player. Kayvon Riley is thrown in there, 12.5 2.5 points per contest as well. They've dealt with a few injuries with guys like Teron Allen being in and out of the fold, but are about as healthy now as they have been all season long. And this is a Delaware team that, though they don't necessarily do the world's greatest job on the glass, they have been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of being able to hold up with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Top 75 unit in all of college basketball in that regard. This is not a Stony Brook team that's going to put you under too much duress. And just with this Stony Brook team, they do not play very up-tempo at all. They are outside the top 330 in terms of total possessions per game. So I do think that just in terms of the sheer, shall we say, tempo of Stony Brook, it's going to slow things down just a little bit for and over. I did set my total at a 151.5 as a result. I'm in on the under. And with Delaware, wrote this up. I'm willing to lay up to 15 with them. Set them as a 15.5 point favorite. Sub 63, sub 64 on the betting board. Memphis, they are on the road against Temple. We give our to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, as Temple is an underdog of 7.5 to 8.5 points. So on this game between 154.5 to a 155. And with regards to this Temple unit, I did set them as an underdog of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, I've been off put by the fact that Lynn Greer has given this Temple team a big giant nothing burger. He was supposed to be their starting point guard, got suspended. Ever since he's come back, he's been about as useful as a poopy flavored lollipop. 4 points, 3 rebounds per contest. So you have only one guy on the roster that gives you north of 2 assists per game. That'd be Quante Berry, who's been able to give you 9.5 points, only about 2.3 assists per contest. But Zion Stafford, Steve Settle, and Jamal Mashburn Jr., your top 3 scorers, all give you 1.9 assists per game. It's been a strange and eclectic offense that's seen Jamal Mashburn Jr. throwing their 44% three-point shooting, 20.5 points per contest. He's been rock solid there, and it's a Temple team that has been functional, but where they've really lacked is they're allowing a whole bunch of second and third chances. If you look at their defensive rebound percentage, they are outside the top 3 internationally. Memphis should be able to light them ablaze, with Dane Danger doing a very solid job giving this team 6+ rebounds per game. PJ Haggerty has been able to give this team 20+ points per contest, but also throws in there right around about 5 boards. And with Haggerty, he's been able to shoot from 3-point range about 42.5% from the outside. Tyrese Hunter shoots about 43% from 3-point range. That said, this is also a unit in Memphis that they turn the ball over 14.5 times per game. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they are outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. They've also really given it up from 3-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range. They've been able to do a much better job, surprisingly, on the road rather than at home. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from 3. This goes down to about 31.5% on the road, which is why I did throttle back my total just a little bit. I throttled this down to about a 153, so I'm going to be in on this total under. It is a Temple team that, with regards to generating turnovers, not great, not terrible. They get about 12 per contest, so a little bit below nation average, but they've been a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and you do have the versatility of Steve Settle, who stands right around about 6'9", 6'10", shooting about 39.5% from 3-point range. I like what you've been able to get out of Shane Dezzoni when he's been out there as well. It's been a little bit banged up, but he throws in there about 4.5 boards, a little bit over a steal per contest, 7 points per game, so some nice mixers and shakers. I do think that Memphis goes on the road, gets the job done, but I do feel like this Temple team starting to come together just a little bit more as well. They've won 2 of their first 3 games. For Memphis right now on the road, they are shooting an unrealistic 42.5% from 3-point range. I do think that this ticks downward just a skosh, which allows Temple to be able to hold in this game. So I did set my number at a 7. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and maybe my total 153 in on the under. This will be another game I write up. 765, 766 on the card. New Mexico State is on the road against Florida International. Florida International does find themselves as a home underdog. You're going to be catching between 2.5 and 3 points with them. Total on this game, 142.5 to a 143. Maybe my total 142.5. I'm in on the under. Do have a Florida International team that's a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game. But the reason why I wrote this one up is that I like Florida National outright on the money line. And the big reason why is that this team has been able to really up their game defensively. This team was putrid on defense last season. This year, they're ranking 81st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 61st in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And New Mexico, they put you on the free throw line, 358th in all of college basketball in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis. Now, this is a New Mexico State team that should be able to win the battle down low. Florida National's been a little bit better on the boards, but you've got Jonathan Ibar, who gives you about 5 rebounds per game, and then Jaden Bruder has had to be a little bit of a do-it-all sort of player, gives the team 14+ points, throws in their 5 boards, a trio assists, what have you. And for this New Mexico State team, you've got Shaminga Square. Both of these guys standing about 6'10" to 7 feet tall. Emmanuel Shaminga, 4.5 boards, only about 3 points per contest. And Nate Shaminga, he only gives you like 3 points per game, but once again, is a nice little clogger down low. So these guys have been able to do a rock solid job with that regard. And it is a New Mexico State team that they shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. Big reason why Christian Cook has been a cooking, 15 points per contest. You've got your main facilitator in Swati Jackson, who comes over from what used to be Division II West Georgia, now at the Division I level. 10.5 points, 4 boards. He's been able to shoot about 38% from 3-point range, but this New Mexico State team. They've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard along the interior. They have allowed opponents to only shoot about 30% from three-point range, but it's not like this is a Florida National team that's looking to hoist away from three-point range. As a matter of fact, for Florida National, this team is a bottom 100 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. They've only been able to shoot 31% from the outside, so they're looking to get to the rim a little bit more, with Brewer being able to supply his 14.5 to 15 points per contest. You've had Deshaun Gittins really be able to help out along with Anselm Jones. These guys have been able to combine for 19 points per contest, and with Jones, he's now shooting about 39% from three-point range. So a little bit of credit where it is due. I do think the Florida National, a team that does rank in the top 30 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, is going to be able to cause some havoc, going to be able to cause this Mexico State team to be out of duress a little bit, and them being able to get to the free throw line should mitigate the good three-point shooting defense of New Mexico State. So I do like Florida National outright on the money line. Made them a 2.5 point favorite, and did somebody total 142.5, even though you've got an up-tempo team in Florida National in on the under along with that money line. 767, 768 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. Old Dominion plays us at Appalachian St. App State is a 2.5 to a 3-point road favorite. Total on this game, 133.5. I wrote up Old Dominion on the money line. I set them as a 1-point favorite. Now, if you look at the raw metrics for Old Dominion, this is not a good team. They're outside the top 225 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. It was a less than savory start to the season. I really like what I've seen out of them recently, though. They're currently tied for first in the Sun Belt under the tutelage of Mike Jones. You say who, and I say Coach Mike Jones, who comes on over from Virginia Tech, and you've got Sean Duru Gordon along with Robert Davis, who have been able to take over games. These two guys have been able to supply you with a combined 29.5 points per contest. Devin Caesar, he may not have a palace, but he's been able to give this team right around about 11.5 points per contest. They've been dealing with him having a little bit of an injury, as he has been out of the fold really since Christmas, but with him out, this is actually where the surge has been able to come in, as you've got a little bit of a Wally Pipp situation that's happening, as Jaden Johnson, who was a starter for the team to start with, he's been able to up his game. He's been able to give you about 9 points per contest, but Caleb Swinton-Roger has been seeing a few more minutes in these games as they've been looking to go a little bit bigger. He's been able to give you about 2 blocks, 5 rebounds per game, and that's really where this team's bread is buttered, because you've got Duru Gordon along with Stephon Walker, who have been able to combine for about 15 rebounds per game. This has been a relatively solid team on glass, and for Old Dominion, in terms of percentage of their missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound, they've been a top 35 team in all of college basketball with that regard, and Appalachian State is a top 130 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The turnovers continue to be off-putting, though. They are turning the ball over 12 times per contest. They've cleaned up their act a little bit more, with Miles State supplying the team with 15.5 points, 5.5 assists. He's gotten down to about 2.6 turnovers per game and does shoot 40% from three-point range, and then Dior Connors has been able to shoot 47% from the outside, giving you about 7.5 points per contest. Here's what could doom this team, though. In a cover spot, this team shoots 65% of the free throw line. That is about 336th in all of college basketball. Now, they themselves have been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the three-point arc. They're a top 25 team with that regard, but again, this is an Old Dominion team that's not really looking to let it fly from three-point range. They're only shooting about 29.5% from the outside. What they're looking to do is get a second chance, get a third chance, and I think that they're going to be able to do so against an Appalachian State team that's a little bit diminished with their rebounding from a season ago. They're outside the top 100 with regards to rebound rate, so I like Old Dominion here outright on the money line, and what I think is going to be a slog, semi-total 131, so in on the under and in on Old Dominion. 769, 770 on the betting board. Coastal Carolina plays those to Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern does find themselves as a 2 to a 2.5 point underdog. Your total on this game going to be finding it at a 141, and did somebody total 143? I'm in on the over. Georgia Southern, they are a top 40 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Coastal Carolina, a bottom 30 team in terms of total possessions per game, but Coastal Carolina, it's actually been a halfway decent three-point shooting team, and you do have a Georgia Southern unit that just has not been able to get good, clean, flowing offense in general. This team is 294th, Georgia Southern is, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Coastal Carolina, not going to call them the Mona Lisa Vito of offense, but they're 209th in the country with this regard, and I do think that for Coastal Carolina, they're going to be able to do a good job of winning this battle down low, as Georgia Southern does not have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game while outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. And meanwhile, the 7-footer Noah Ammenhauser, who comes on over from Grand Canyon, 11 points, 6 boards, a little bit under a block per contest, really like what he brings to the table. And then you've got Rashad Jones. He's been able to give this team 5 boards, 2 assists, 13.5 points, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. This Coastal Carolina unit has been a pretty solid unit in terms of guarding from the outside as well. A top 55 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Now, what Coastal Carolina doesn't do is put you under duress. You're going to be able to get more clean possessions than ever before for Georgia Southern, because Coastal Carolina generates 7.2 turnovers per game. Out of 364 D1 teams, that is 364th in all of college basketball, but This is also a unit in Georgia Southern that'll put you on the free throw line. They're outside the bottom 15 in the country in terms of free throws allowed on a per game basis, and they themselves only shoot 65.8% of the free throw line. That's a bottom 45 mark in all of college basketball. They're still dealing with the injury to Dante Holloman. That was their top scorer to begin the season. He was giving the team 15 points per contest. So Bradley Douglas and Kavion White have had to step up. They're giving you combined about 26.5 points per contest. White has been able to shoot 37% from three-point range, and you really don't have that main facilitator. White gives you about 2.5 assists per contest, but so does Dante Horn, Aaron Banks as well. It's just a little bit of a rudderless and strange group in general, and for Georgia Southern, they do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point arc, but again, they put you on the free throw line a lot. This is the Coastal Carolina team as a whole. They shoot about 71% of the free throw line. Not great, not terrible. Denzel Hines has good versatility, 8.5 points. He only shoots about 65% at the charity stripe, but he's been able to chip in there about 6.5 boards per contest as well. The ancillary guards like Nas Brown, Henry Abraham, they've been able to flow some good offense as well. So look at this spot. I do think the Coastal Carolina gets the job done in a game where I do think that it's going to be cranked a little bit more up-tempo. Again, Georgia Southern should be able to see more clean possessions than they typically do, but do think that Coastal Carolina gets the job done. Willing to lay up to 4.5 with Coastal, and I'm in on the over, set by total 143. 771, 772 on the betting board. St. Peter's is playing us at Marist. Marist is a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game 121.5. I set my total at a 125.5. I'm in on the over. As for St. Peter's, this team once again well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and so is Marist. But here's what I come back to with St. Peter's in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis. They are outside the top 345 nationally. That is going to put Marist on the free throw line. That's going to give you a lot of free chances. That said, with this Marist team, they're not necessarily the world's greatest free throw shooting team in the world, although they've been able to shoot it quite well from three-point range. Right now for Marist, they're shooting as a collective 69.8% at the free throw line. You've got Josh Passarelli, who's been able to bomb it at 44% from three-point range. He's given the team 17 points per contest, and your top three scorers for Marist all shoot at least 73% at the free throw line. Everyone outside that shoots below about 58% at the free throw line. So clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. So there are some guys that you want to foul if you're St. Peter's. Jaden Daughtry, he's been able to give you 6.5 points, leads the way with 6 rebounds per game, a steal and a half per contest, but again shoots about 46.5% from the free throw line. So that's going to be a little bit suspect there. And this is a Marist team that they allow a lot of open looks from three-point range. You're allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range, and it's a St. Peter's unit that has really been buttering their bread from three-point range as far this season. As right now you've got a St. Peter's team that they're shooting as a collective 37% from three-point range. Marcus Randolph being the main of them, shooting 38% from the outside, supplying the team with 14.5 points per contest. Armani Ziegler shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, throws in their 11 points per contest. And even though St. Peter's fouls as much as they do a really nice job of just being able to restrict the outside shots that you get. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 28.5% from three-point range. They're a top 100 defense with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. And this St. Peter's team, they just find a way to be able to get second chances. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. And with Marist really having nobody that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, I do think that St. Peter's goes in there, gets a bunch of second chances, finds a way to be able to get the job done in this spot. I did set St. Peter's at home as a -1.5 favorite, so I'm going to be willing to ride with St. Peter's in this spot. I think that it's going to be a nip and tuck game. Again, I do think that it's going to be a low possession game. Both of these teams outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. As a matter of fact, I think both are outside the top 300, but I do think that the fouling, I do think that the open looks from three-point range going to be just enough to be able to get this one over. So I'm in on the over, and I'm in on St. Peter's taking the money line with them as I set them as my favorite. 773, 774 on the betting board. Michigan is on the road against Minnesota State with the smallest strengths in the union. Minnesota is a 10-point underdog. Total on this game 144.5. I tease, of course, but that said, I'm not teasing when I say I made Michigan an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Minnesota has been able to cover 3 spreads this far this season, and it has been a case where they've covered 2 out of the last 3, so they're getting a little bit hot. I like what I'm seeing of Dawson Garcia, 18.5 points, 7 boards, and he's able to give you 37% three-point shooting. To the credit of Minnesota, they really don't turn the ball over a lot, 10.5 turnovers per game, but this defense has been going down the toilet bowl. They're about 240th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and this has been a unit that has found themselves outside the top 125 with that regard, and typically this team gets a massive boost at home, and they certainly have been able to score more points on a per possession basis when they've been at home rather than when they've been on the road. But this is still a team that defensively, whether they be at home, whether they be on the road, they struggle a little bit here, and they have to go up against a Michigan team that should just absolutely maul on the glass. This Michigan team is a top 20 unit in the country with regards to rebound percentage, with Vladislav Golden along Danny Wolf being able to supply the team with a combined about 16 rebounds per game. And for Michigan, the ancillary pieces have shot it really well from three-point range, as Nobari Burnett shoots north of 40% from three-point range. He's right now supplying the team with about 11 points per contest. Will Shedder last year shot north of 50% from three-point range. You figured that wouldn't duplicate itself, but still shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. With Danny Wolf, the big thing is needs to cut down on the turnovers. It's 3.8 turnovers per game among qualifying Division I players in the top 20 in the country, and that's not a category you want to be in the top 20 in, but Danny Wolf has been able to give you a block and a half, a steal per contest as well. Roddy Gale, Trey Donaldson, they've been able to combine for about 25 points per contest as well, and this is a Minnesota team that does not generate turnovers. Well outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With this Michigan team, they also do not give you a lot of open looks from three-point range, allowing opponents to shoot only about 29.5% from three-point range, while Mike Mitchell has been able to come back for Minnesota, give the team a little bit of something in the backcourt, about 3 assists, 11.5 points per contest, relatively solid three-point shooter, and Lucille Patterson has doled it out with about 4 assists per game. I think that for Minnesota, they're fighting an uphill battle, and I do think that Michigan going to get things cranked up tempo. This has been a Minnesota team that's been outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Michigan team that they're looking to play significantly faster. They have turned over a little bit of a new leaf under their new coach, Dusty May, 41st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So did set my total 145.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 11 points here with Michigan. Sub 75, sub 76 on the betting board. It is College of Charleston on the road against Campbell. Campbell, the Fighting Campbells, are a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog. Total on this game between 149 to 149.5. With Campbell, I did set them as an underdog of 89 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Coastal. This has been a Campbell team that's just been absolutely awful with their offense, especially at home. For Campbell overall this season, they're outside the top 240 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look at home games and home games alone, they are 5th worst in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are keeping company with Chicago State, NJIT, Texas Southern, and Mississippi Valley State. That is not good, to say the least, and for this Campbell Fighting Campbell team, you don't have a single guy down low that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, so Ante Brizovic should be able to have his way in this game. For Brizovic, guy stands right in the neighborhood about 6'9", 6'10", and he's been able to pop it from three-point range at north of a 37% clip. He's been able to supply this team with 18.5 points, 8.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, and then you throw in there Deweek Tavares, who's really been able to surge recently, averaging 15 plus points per contest over the last month and a half. He's been able to give this team 13 points. He's shooting 40% from three-point range. And CJ Fulton, while he doesn't shoot it a ton, as he's more of a primary facilitator, 6 assists per game, he does shoot when he does take it from three, about 40% per distance, 8 points per game. Now, the one thing that Charleston has done, they've turned the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, a little bit less than tremendous there. They're outside the top 200 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, but not like this Campbell team necessarily has a lot of threats to be able to give you a ton down low. Jusan Sani has been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest, and Colby Duggan, we're going to give a little bit of credit where it is too. He's a 6'7", little bit of a combo player that's shooting 35.5% from three-point range. Had a little bit of a slow start to the season, but he's been able to surge recently. This man has been able to give the team at least 12 points in each of their last 5 games, and he's gotten over the 11-point barrier in all but one of the team's last 10. So he's been able to give the team a little bit more, shall we say, stability. Taryn Frank, when he's been out there, as he's been in and out of the fold, gives you 9 points per contest as well. But this is also a Campbell unit that, while they do a nice job guarding the arc, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 30.5% from three. 347th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. I think that Charleston is going to be able to win the battle on the glass. I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog with Campbell not doing their part with regards to total, despite the fact that Charleston is a top 75 unit in terms of total possessions per game. Campbell in the bottom 100 with that regard. So did sell my total 144.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 points here with Charleston. 777, 778 on the betting board. Ryder plays us at Mount St. Mary's. The Mount is a favorite of 2 points, settles between 137.5 to 138, and with the Mount, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the deuce here. Mount St. Mary's should be able to win this battle down low, as you've got a trio of guys that give you at least 6 rebounds per game. You've got that with Joey Cordelia, Dolo Adbayo, along with also Terrell Art. Art has been the most versatile of them, 11.5 points, 7 boards, throws in there darn near 2.2 assists per contest as well. These are not guys that are going to go into flamethrower mode and take a bunch of threes or anything like that, but with their main guard in Dallas Hobbs being out of the fold, he's missed the last 6 games, was averaging 13 points per game. They've needed it, but Carmelo Pacheco has been the guy that's really stepped up, shooting 42.5% from three-point range, supplying the team with a little bit over 8.5 points per contest thus far this season. But you take a look at what he's been able to do over the last 5 or 6 games, that's really where he's been able to shine, as you've had Xavier Lipscomb become the main point guard for this team, giving you north of 3.5 assists per contest as well. And then on the flip side for Ryder, this has been a team that's been well outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Not the worst team down low, as you've got Tariq Ingram, who's been able to give you in the neighborhood about 6.5 rebounds per game, and F.A. West Ingram has been able to do a rock-solid job as well, give you about 5 points, 3.5 rebounds per contest as well. But in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis, Ryder well outside the top 225. They've been, again, a top 185 team with regards to rebound rate, but this team is outside the top 330 in terms of three-point shooting percentage, shooting 29.1% as a collective. This is despite the fact that your top two scorers, TJ Weeks, Jay Alvarez, they've combined for north of 25 points per contest, and these two guys combined to shoot about 35.5% per three, both shoot north of 85.5% at the free throw line. Then they are pretty much the only two guys on the roster that shoot above 67.5% at the free throw line. So that's been a little bit of an issue. You need more out of guys like Flash Burton, great name by the way, but you need a little bit more there. This team has not been able to do a good job of guarding the interior as well, outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that Mount St. Mary's going to be able to win from within. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a slog of a game as well, with Mount St. Mary's a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, but Ryder just has not been able to do their part with regards to totals all season long. So did somebody total 134.5. I'm in on the under, and with about, I'm willing to lay up to 4 with them. 779, 780 on the betting board. Drexel plays us at Elon. Elon is an underdog of 2 points on this game, 132 to 132.5. Made Drexel a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the deuce here with them. Don't want to go past the 2, but for Elon, a little bit of a tough situation. They had to play that game on Monday because of just a little bit of tomfoolery in general. I think that there was a little bit of a weather situation, but that said, with regards to this Drexel team, they've done a nice job once again defensively, back in the top 110 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Drexel, they just time and time again find a way to get it done on the glass. This team is back in the top 50 nationally with regards to rebound percentage. Elon has been able to do a good job on the glass themselves. They're number 19 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Matthew Van Komen, he stands 7'4". This guy's been able to give you north of 2.5 blocks, 7+ rebounds per game. I love what he's been able to bring to the table, and Elon all of a sudden has been a really good three-point shooting defense as well. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.5% from the outside. For Elon, it's been all about Nick Dorn with regards to the backcourt. He and Sam Sherry combined to shoot about 38% for three-point range between the two of them, about 31 points per contest. And Sherry does stand 6'10", so he's able to haul in there about 8 boards per contest as well. He does a nice job in that regard. But what you're going to be able to get on Elon, clean possessions. Elon is in the bottom 25 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and that's big because this has been a Drexel team that their main kryptonite has been they turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest as a team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Now, Drexel's the same way. They only generate about 9.5 turnovers per game. They're in the bottom 30 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But for Yami Butler, he's able to supply the team with 14 points, 4 boards. Kobe McGee is now shooting 45.5% from three-point range, and you've got some good versatility with this team, including having Cole Hargrave giving you a block and a half, 11 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Love what he's able to bring to the table. And then you've been able to get some really good outside shooting out Jason Drake as well, the main point guard, with about 3 boards, 3 assists, 9 points per contest, shooting 37.5% from three-point range. I do think that this Drexel team, a team that's in the top 30 nationally with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing them to shoot just 28.5% from the outside, finds a way to get the job done. These are two pretty similar teams. These are two relatively low-tempo teams, so I think the points are going to be at a premium. Did semi-total at a 130.5 as a result, so in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 points here with Drexel. 781, 782 on the betting board. It is Siena, and they're going to be playing against the Sacred Heart. And Sacred Heart does find themselves as an underdog of 1.5 points. 140 to 140.5 is the total, and for Siena, made them a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 for Sacred Heart. This has been a unit that has been able to get healthier recently, as they were dealing with an injury to Anquan Hill for the first 5 or so games of the season, and then Tanner Thomas. Both of these guys are guys with versatility. Both of these guys have been able to give you double figures. They're both back in the fold. Hill is a 6'9", little bit of a wing player who's been able to give you 11.5 points per contest from three-point range. He's shooting 44% from the outside, supplies the team with 5 rebounds per game. Thomas is shooting north of 54% from three-point range now. Did think that we're going to see a little bit of regression there, but you love to see that. And with Thomas and Anquan Hill, they combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game. Bryce Johnson has been able to give you about 6.3 rebounds per game as well. But the undoing of Sacred Heart is that this defense has been poor, to say the least. They are outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've been able to do a nice job on the glass. This is a top 150 unit with regards to their rebound percentage, but they are allowing a lot of open looks at the basket, and this is a Siena team that they're very much built from the outside. This Siena team does not have a single guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, but Major Freeman in the backcourt has been able to do a nice job of being able to help out Justice Schultz in being the point guard. With Freeman, he gives you a pair of assists, 14.5 points per contest, while Schultz, 4 assists, 15 points per game. These two guys have been able to shoot it relatively well from three-point range as well, with Schultz being your main man, shooting about 37.5% from three-point range. But how about Brendan Coyle and the fact that he's shot 30% 39.5%. From three, he's able to give the team a little bit over 11 points per contest. With Siena, they themselves have their outside shooting defensive issues. They are allowing opponents to shoot 36.5% from three-point range. That's outside the top 330 nationally as well, but with this unit as well, they've been a top 15 team in the country with regards to their block shot percentages. You've got a pair of guys in Miles Wilmoth along with Peter Carey who don't necessarily give you a lot of scoring. Both of these guys give you less than 6 points per contest. Neither of these guys necessarily dominate on the boards, but they've been able to do a nice job rejecting shots, doing a good job down low for this team, and I do think that Siena is going to be able to utilize that, cut Sacred Heart off with regards to the interior defense, and for Sacred Heart, I just don't know if their three-point shooting is going to be able to translate on the road, as this has been a Sacred Heart team that has given up more than 18 points more per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home. Siena surprisingly giving up just a skoge more scoring at home rather than on the road as well. So interesting scenario here. I did set my total at 142. I think that both of these teams can have plenty of open looks from three-point range. So in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to take Siena here, willing to lay up to a point and a half with them. 783, 784 on the betting board. Iona is going to be playing against Canisius. Canisius is an underdog of 10 to 10.5 points. Don's game getting it at a 142, and with regards to Iona, I did set them as a favorite of 12.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number now. For Iona, it has been less than tremendous in terms of them taking care of the ball. They're in the bottom 10 nationally in terms of ball security, but what is this Canisius team really doing well? Like, I asked that sort of jokingly, and I asked that not jokingly, as Canisius right now 358th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a little bit better with regards to their offense, but they're still well outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis as well. This is a Canisius team that at this point is a dump. You don't have really a lot in terms of hanging your hat on with regards to offense, as you've got only one guy that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, and it's just been all about what you've been able to get out of the Central Michigan transfer in Paul McMillan. McMillan has been able to supply the team with 20 points, 3.5 boards, 3 assists per contest, so he's actually done a quality job there. And if Canisius can just find a way to get to the free throw line, they're actually a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to free throw shooting percentage. They take the second fewest free throw attempts, though, in all of college basketball. They generate 0 turnovers whatsoever. They allow opponents to shoot darn near 36% from three-point range. Janacopa has been able to give you about 12 points per contest, but Campbell is 4.9 rebounds per game, leads the way. There's nobody else on the roster that gives you north of 3.6 boards per contest, so this team is just going to be outgunned there. And this is an Iona team that is in the top 55 with regards to their rebound percentage. They've dealt with a little bit of an injury to Clarence Rupert, who was part of that St. Peter's Elite 8 run many years ago. He's been able to give you 7.5 points, 4.5 boards, does a rock solid job down low. And then James Patterson, along with Yafet Mundi, have been able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game. Even DeJour Reeves, their top scorer, was able to slide the team with 15 points per contest. He throws in there about 5 boards per contest as well. Iona also needs to improve their three-point shooting percentage, shooting just 29.5% from three-point range, as they've been allowing opponents to shoot also 36% from three-point range. But again, they do such a great job of being able to create turnovers. They're a top 10 team in the country with this regard. It is a Canisius team that has just been all over the place. I think that they're going to lose that battle down low. I do think that Iona finds a way to get the job done against a Canisius team that wish they could put it any other way, but they just have not been able to find themselves this year. They've only got one straight up win thus far this campaign, and I do think that that continues here, as I did set Iona as a favorite of 12.5 points, despite the fact that they've been a bit rough this year. Willing to lay that number. Did set my total at a 142.5 as well. Just barely willing to take a shot on the over, because Iona does allow opponents to shoot 36% from three-point range themselves. So in on the over and in on Iona laying this number. 785, 786 on the betting board. It is Fiarfield, and they play us in Niagara. Niagara is between a 1-point favorite to a 1-point underdog, depending upon where you look. 135.5 is the total, and with Niagara, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take them as a money line underdog / as a 1-point favorite, regardless of what you've got with this Fiarfield team. Just not a team that has really gotten a lot outside of Prophet Johnson. Prophet Johnson has been rock solid. He's been able to give the team north of 6.5 rebounds per game, 11.5 points per contest, but he's a lone double-figure scorer for this team. Lone guy that's giving you north of 4.3 rebounds per game. He leads the way with 1.7 steals per contest as well, but without him, you just have nothing else for this team, as they're right now, in terms of opponents' field goal shooting percentage, ranking 350th in all of college basketball. They themselves outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. This has been a unit that has honestly been able to do an okay job of not allowing a lot of second and third chances on the glass, but you know what? This is a team that they just need to find their identity, and it just feels like they don't have much of that, especially down low. You've got Peyton Smith, who's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game, but for Niagara. Their main kryptonite is that they don't necessarily have a ton down low. That's not going to be unearthed in this game. You've got Aludun, who's been able to give you 11 points, 5.5 boards. Good versatility with him, as he's been able to give this team right around about a steal per contest as well. Throw in there Justice Smith, who's been able to give you 2.5 assists, shoot 40% from 3-point. He and Jahari Williamson both give you 10 points per contest and both shoot 40+% from 3. It's a Niagara team that has really given up from 3-point range. They're outside the top 330 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but they've been able to buckle down a little bit more down low. Top 175 unit in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, with Fiarfield not having a lot of threats to be able to bomb it from 3-point range, and with Niagara not allowing a lot of second chances. Now, they themselves are not going to get an offensive rebound. They are in the bottom 10 nationally in terms of offensive rebounds per game, but I do think that Niagara going to do a good job in this one, especially with this being a road game for Niagara. Strangely, Niagara, with regards to their offensive efficiency, have been really suffering no drop-off whatsoever with regards to road games over the last 2 seasons. Actually, last year they were more efficient on the road rather than at home. We've seen that iron out a little bit more this season, but for Niagara, I do think that they go on the road, find a way to get the job done against a Fairfield team that's been rudderless, strange. Fairfield just 263rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but also well outside that top 225 mark in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So, circumstance where I did set my total at a 136.5 to go along with Niagara as a 1-point favorite / a 1-point underdog / as a just underdog. I'm going to take them on the money line. I do like this total over as well. 787, 788 on the betting board. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both. America's favorite tag team is on the road against Hampton. Hampton is a 2.5 to 3-point home underdog. Total on this game, it is 150, and with Hampton, I set them as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them outright on the money line with William and Mary. This has been a team that has completely changed their tempo. Last year, they were outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. Now they're within the top 125, as it has been the Coach Earl style coming over from Cornell, as Brian Earl has completely changed his team, as now you've got wholesale hockey style line shifts, for lack of a better term, as you pretty much got 10 different guys that play at least 10 minutes for this team. Keller Boothby being one of the main of them. He came on over with Coach Earl from Cornell and has been a nice 3-point shooter for them, shooting 40% from 3-point range, and that's the name of the game when it comes to this William and Mary team. They are looking to get up a bunch of threes. They take north of 51% of their shots from 3-point range, and they do shoot 36% from the outside. They leave something to be desired down low, though. You do have Noah Collier, who's been able to do a rock solid job being able to give this team a team high 13.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest, and has shot a few threes himself at about 30%. But that said, this is a William and Mary team that they leave themselves very vulnerable on the defensive side of things, and typically with Coach Earl styles, they do a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers, but as a result, they'll leave themselves a little bit more vulnerable from 2-point range, but they're only generating about 12.5 turnovers per game, very average with regards to the way that they generate turnovers. And this is a Hampton team that I think is going to be able to do a nice job taking care of the ball. I do think that Hampton is going to be able to win that battle down low with Kyrie Smolin being able to haul in for the team 7.5 boards to go along with his 9 points per game. Noah Farrakhan has been the top scorer and hasn't been necessarily an efficient scorer, but 13 points per contest, only shoots 30% from 3-point range, but he and George Beal combined to shoot north of 83% the free throw line. Beal has been able to shoot 41% from 3-point range. Daniel Johnson shoots 39% from the outside, and this is a Hampton team that has been allowing opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. That's 273rd in all of college basketball, so I think that that's really going to crank up the scoring, despite the fact that Hampton has slowed themselves down. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that you're going to get a high-scoring expose in this one, so I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over, but this is also a Hampton team that has been starting to be able to generate a few more turnovers, especially when they've been at home. This is a Hampton unit that is in the top 100 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I do think that they're going to be causing a little bit of duress, and with this is William and Mary team not necessarily being able to get a lot of offensive rebounds. That has been a little bit of an issue for them. I do think that Hampton is going to be able to find a way to be able to get something going from the outside, though. Their interior offense has been leaving something to be desired. The fact that they've been pulling in so many offensive rebounds. They get darn near 14 offensive rebounds per game in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They do rank in the top 40 nationally. I think that this is a Hampton team that finds a way to be able to win from within, and I do think that they're going to buckle down just a little bit more with regards to that 3-point shooting defense as well. So I do think that Hampton, with those second chances, those third chances, they do find a way to be able to get the job done in this spot. I did set them as a favorite as a result of 2.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line. With regards to this total, I did set mine at a 158.5, so also in on the over to go along with that money line. 789, 790 on the betting board. It is UNC Wilmington, and they're going to be playing us in Northeastern. Northeastern does find themselves as a underdog of 6 points. Total on this game, it is 141, and with UNC Wilmington, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northeastern. This has been a Northeastern unit that has very much been able to improve with regards to their defense. Does need to turn the ball over a little bit less. They've been turning the ball over darn near 13 times per contest, but this is a Northeastern team that should be able to do a solid job being able to win that battle down low. Harlan Obiana has been pretty rock solid for this UNC Wilmington team. He's able to give you 6 rebounds per game. You've also been able to get back Mr. Ross, who's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game. Nolan Ross has been able to do a solid job there, but this has been a Northeastern team that, with regards to percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, they've been a top 150 unit with that regard. This despite the fact that they lost their main big man from a season ago in Chris Doherty. And for Northeastern, just a lot of versatility with this team, as they were without Messiah Troutman for the beginning part of the season. He's come back, and he has been a top 3 scorer for the team, being able to give them 15 points per contest. Rashad King has been that main man, 17.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 36.5% from 3, while Troutman shoots 42.5% from 3-point range. For Northeastern, again, it has been a case where they have not been able to do a great job of taking hold of the ball. That said, they've done a nice job down low with regards to their interior defense, a top 55 unit in the country in terms of block shot percentage, with Cullen Metcalf being able to give you about 2.2 blocks, throws in their 5 rebounds per game. And this has been a UNC Wilmington team that just has not shot it well from 3-point range. I wish I could put it any other way, but right now this team is well outside the top 250 with regards to that 3-point shooting percentage at right around about 32.5%. Donovan Newby has been able to shoot 37% from the outside, 16.5 points per game. And then Cam McGriff is really the lone other guy that gives you north of 9 points per game. He throws in there about 11 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. With Ross and Obiana, they've been able to do a rock solid job down low. And Sean Moore has been able to give you more nice versatility, a little bit over seal, 7.5 points, a little bit over 6 rebounds per game. But this is also a UNC Wilmington team that on the interior, they're outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They do have their issues in terms of being able to put you under duress. They don't turn the ball over a lot, but they themselves don't force a lot of turnovers. They very much are reliant upon free throw shooting opportunities to be able to generate their offense as well. They're in the top 25 nationally in terms of free throw attempts per game, and this is a Northeastern team that does a pretty solid job of not putting you on the free throw line. So I do think the Northeastern is going to be able to hold in this game. I do think that it's going to be a little bit sloppier. I did set my total at a 138.5. I do think that we're going to have this UNC Wilmington team was outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, playing this a little bit more low and slow. Northeastern well outside that mark as well in terms of total possessions per game. These are two teams that dial it back quite a bit. So in on the under and the points with Northeastern. 791, 792 on the betting board. It is Towson, and they play us Hofstra. Hofstra does find themselves as a underdog of 4 points. Totals between 123 to a 124. And with the Hoff, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 4. With Towson, this has been a all over the place offense thus far this season. One night they're going to go off for 80, one night they're going to go off for 50, and that's what you get with a team that's outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. On the flip side, you got a Hofstra team that they typically play relatively slowly. They're playing even more slowly this season as they've been able to find a little bit more down low with Michael Graham giving you 7+ rebounds per game, but Hofstra 262nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I actually am going to take this total under. I set my total at a 123. Hofstra not quite as good from the perimeter as they've been in past years, but Gene Amarujan has been able to give you some very nice versatility. He comes in from Iona. He supplied the team with about 14.5 points, 6 boards, 4.5 assists per game, shooting 35.5% from 3-point range. And overall, it's a Hofstra team that shoots about 34% from 3-point range. One of the worst teams in all of college basketball, being able to generate second chances and being able to grab offensive rebounds. That said, they don't necessarily allow a lot of second chances for their opponents as well. And for the Hofstra team, if it comes down to free throw shooting percentage, they do have the edge here. They shoot as a collective about 73.5% of the charity stripe. Their top 4 scorers, all but one of them, shoot at least 73% at the free throw line. And for Towson, this just hasn't been the same rebounding team that they've been in past years as well. You can tell that they're clearly missing Charles Thompson, as you've had Tyler Teata really step up as a nice go-to scorer. 4 boards, 17 points per contest, shooting about 33% from 3-point range. And then down low, you do have a pair of guys in Christian May, Mekhi Lowry, who have both been able to give you between 5 and 6 rebounds per game, but it's a Tarleton team that, with regards to their rebound percentage, they're now well outside the top 75 with that regard. Last year, they were a top 25 team in this respect, and they are allowing opponents to shoot 34% from three-point range. That's outside the top 225 nationally. They themselves shoot only about 31.5% from three, and in regards to two-point shooting percentage, it's even worse. 348th in all of college basketball. They don't turn the ball over a lot. They only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, but part of that is just because they play so slowly. Nenda Tark, Dillian Williamson, they've been able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest, and Tark, a few seasons ago when he was over at Campbell State, he was actually a top 10 player in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced per game, in terms of being able to generate steals, but the Hofstra team does a relatively solid job being able to take care of the ball. They've got a little bit more depth than we've seen in past years, and with the way that Tarleton has just shot it in general, I think that you're in for a low-scoring slog between two teams that really are not playing with a lot of pace. They're not playing with a lot of tempo. Hofstra, they themselves, down from their typical offensive standard, 341st in the country in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. So I think that you're in for a rock fight, semi-total 123. I'm in on the under, and with Tarleton going to make them a 3-point favorite, so won't take 4+ here with Hofstra. 793, 794 on the betting board. It is Marshall. They hit the road. They're facing off against James Madison. Our nation's fourth president just find themselves as a favorite of in that neighborhood about 5.5 to 6 points. So on this game, going to be fighting between 143 to a 143.5. And with James Madison, I'm going to be writing this one up. I set them as a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with James Madison. They've been able to do a nice job in terms of their offensive rebounding. They're a top 45 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they do pull in as an offensive rebound. And for Marshall, this has been a pretty solid team down low as well. You've got Obiano, Onchale, Killian, along with Nate Martin, pair of guys that will be able to give you 7+ rebounds per game. Onchale, Killian has some pretty good versatility as well. This is a guy that gives you 2.2 blocks per contest. Last year shot it well from three-point range. This year shooting 18% from three-point range, so we've seen a bit of a drop-off there. Meanwhile, with Nate Martin, he's been able to give you a little bit over 2 assists per contest, but this is just on a Marshall team that has good, clean, flowing offense, or really a lot to speak of from the outside. Right now, Marshall is shooting as a collective 30% from three-point range. That's a bottom 45 mark in all of college basketball. They themselves are a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage, but I also do allow a lot on the interior. They're outside the top 220 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. You've got Mikkel Dawson, who's done a nice job in the backcourt, giving you about 13.5 points. Shoots 87% on the free throw line as well, 37.5% from three-point range. Well, you've been able to have Desane Mingo be able to give you 11.5 points. He's been able to do a nice job, be able to flow this offense with about 5 assists per contest, 2.5 turnovers per game. But this is a James Madison team that the defense is starting to come along a little bit more. They're not generating turnovers the way that they have in the past. And under Preston Spradling, when he was over at Morehead St, typically teams will play super duper slow. He took over a James Madison team that was playing super duper fast, and there are a few holdovers like Xavier Brown who have been big time contributors, 11.5 points, 3 assists per contest. So he's sort of been mixing A and B together, but he has found a nice blend with this team as they've been able to shoot as collective north of 35% from three-point range, with Bryce Lindsey leading the way. He's actually coming in as a 6th man, 12 points, 86% free throw shooter, 43% three-point shooter. Brown, he's been able to shoot about 36% from the outside. And then got good versatility with Elijah Hutchins Everett. Stands right around about 6'8", 12 points, pulls in there 6 boards. He's been able to shoot about 33% from three-point range, and this is a team that they really don't beat themselves. They turn the ball over about 12 times per contest. Pretty expectable with regards to their tempo, and I do think that this is a game where James Madison, even though the defense, it hasn't necessarily been the best all season long, they're coming off of that rough loss against Appalachian St. It's good to be able to rise up just a little bit more. I do think that they find a way against a Marshall team that they themselves have been well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, relying a lot on second and third chances to be able to get scoring, that they do find a way to be able to get the job done here. I did write up James Madison, laying that number in. With regards to total, I did set mine at a 145.5. I do think that we're going to see things dial back just a little bit more with James Madison moving forward, but again, this has been a James Madison team that they've been outside the top 220 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis themselves. So in on the over and willing to lay with James Madison. 795, 796 on the betting board. Kennesaw St, we give our ode to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They are going to be playing out to Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State is a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Total on this game, it is 162, and I made my total 166. I'm in on the over. Sam Houston State, not necessarily the most up-tempo team in the world. They're actually outside the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game. Kennesaw State very much is looking to push some tempo. They're 28th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Sam Houston State is just getting gashed on defense. This team is outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they really give it up from three-point range. Sam Houston State is allowing opponents in a roadside neutral court setting to shoot north of 38% from three-point range, and that's a big reason why I did set Kennesaw State as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take Kennesaw State in this spot. With regards to the Owls of Kennesaw State, you've been able to get a lot from your main two guards, as Simeon Kodal is back from a season ago and Adrian Woolley has stepped in. These two guys both give you between 18.3 and 18.4 points per contest. They combine for about 6.5 assists per game. Woolley shoots 48.5% from three. Kodal, 93% the free throw line, 36.5% from three-point range. Outside that, the scoring does take quite a bit of a drop-off, but you've got some nice mixers and shakers like Jamal Miller along with Brandon Liu. These are the two guys that really hit the boards for this team. They've been able to give you combined about 12.5 rebounds per game. Now, it is a Kennesaw State team that comes with their serious warts on the defensive side of things. They've been able to do a nice job in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.5% from three-point range as well, but they are allowing a lot of offensive rebounds as well, and this has been a team that's been well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Flip side, this is a Sam Houston State team that does have a nice go-to scorer, as you've had Lamar Wilkerson be able to shoot north of 39% from three-point range. He's been able to give the team darn near 19 points per game, and though Sam Houston State allows a lot of wide open looks from three-point range, they're 22nd in the country themselves with their 38.5% three-point shooting. You've got Dorian Finster, who's been able to give you a little bit of versatility. He comes in from Kansas State. He's been able to give you a double-figure amount of points. He holds in their 6+ rebounds per game. It is a Sam Houston State team that, with regards to their overall rebound rate, they're hovering right around about country average in that top 200 range. But that said, they have been a team that has also turned the ball over darn near 13 times per contest while being a relatively mid-tempo team. You've got Cameron Huffner, though, who's been able to slide this team with 14 points, 5 boards per contest, shoots 35.5% from three-point range. And Sam Houston State much better at the free throw line this season than they've been in past years. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury earlier in the season to Marcus Boykin. That is the main point guard of this team, who's been able to give you about 5 assists, throws in their 10.5 points per contest, but getting him back, that's relatively big. And in the last 4 games that he has played, and he's given the team at least 14 points in every one of them, albeit they've won 1-3 in those games, but they certainly have been able to provide some scoring in that time span as well. So I do think that you get a very nice up and down game. Both of these teams, I think, are going to be able to stroke it from three-point range. You've got a Sam Houston State team that they come in having allowed at least 75 points in pretty much every one of their games ever since the turn of the new year. Really, frankly, other than their games against non-D1 teams, they've been giving up 75 plus on the regular all season long. So do think that you're going to get an up and down game. Did set my line at a 166 with regards to the total in on the over, and with Kennesaw State, made them the 2-point favorites, so taking them outright on the money line. 797, 798 on the betting board. Jacksonville State is going to be playing against Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is a 1-point road favorite. Total on this game, it is a 140.5, and with Louisiana Tech, I did set them as a underdog of 1.5 points. I'd like Jacksonville State outright on the money line with the Jacksonville State team. They've been unable to generate turnovers. They're in the bottom 10 in the country with that regard, but they're flowing good, clean offense right now, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that sometimes they stub their toe with that regard. You've got Sean Newman, who's maybe give you 10 plus points, and he's in the top 5 nationally with regards to assists per game. He's been doling out north of 9 assists per game, but for Jacksonville State, this team, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're a top 100 unit in the country. Ironically enough, Jacksonville State is actually averaging more than 10 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. I think that that's a little bit of an outlier. I do think that that's going to be ironing out just a touch more moving forward. And for this Jacksonville State team, they've got a top 6 scorers in all of college basketball in Jerome Pierre, who's been able to give the team north of 22 points per game. He's been shooting 40% from three-point range. And for this Jacksonville State team, they shoot 37% from three-point range as a collective. They've done a good job owning the boards as well. This is a top 50 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Now, they have to go up against a Bacho man, Daniel Bacho, who for this Louisiana Tech team, he's been able to haul in their 7 rebounds per game, gives you north of 2.5 blocks per contest. He doesn't give you a lot of versatility in terms of popping it from 3, but 18.5 points per game. Amari Abraham, he's thrown in there 13 points per game. He shoots 40% from three-point range, but it is a Louisiana Tech team that they've done a pretty solid job with regards to perimeter defense this year. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.5% from three-point range. That's been a top 75 mark in all of college basketball, and specifically on the road, they allow you to shoot just 30.1% from three-point range. With the drop that we've seen with regards to Jacksonville State, with regards to their offense at home, I did set my total 137.5, and this is a Jacksonville State team that they do not play with a lot of tempo whatsoever. As a matter of fact, for Jacksonville State, they rank well outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game. We've seen Louisiana Tech throttle up a little bit more, but they're still only about 250th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I think that you get a little bit of a slog of a game. I do think that Amari Abraham is going to be able to give you some production for Louisiana Tech. He's able to give you 13 points per contest, but keep in mind, Louisiana Tech last year, number 1 in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That's outside the top 100 now. I do think that Jacksonville State going to be able to find a way to be able to win from within, because with Louisiana Tech, they're only pulling in there about 10 offensive rebounds per game. They're actually giving up more offensive rebounds than they get themselves. So I do think that Jacksonville State finds a way with Mason Nicholson giving you about 7 rebounds per game. All of these guys doing a nice job in tandem down low, and Jay Otika being a nice off-the-ball scorer along with Michael Hoagie. These two guys give you 10 points per contest. Otika has been able to shoot about 44% from three-point. Jamar Franklin, he shoots 40% from three. Just too many weapons here for Jacksonville State at home. I'm in on the under, and I do like Jacksonville State outright on the money line. 799, 800 on the betting board. North Carolina A&T is playing against Monmouth, and Monmouth does find themselves as a 1-point underdog. Tonight's game, it is 150.5. Set A&T as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Monmouth team just has not been able to get right both offensively or defensively. They're outside the top 240 in both of those categories. Now, they are going to have a really good raw scorer in Abdi Bashir Jr., who's been amazing for the team. He's right now supplying 21.5 points per contest from three-point. He's shooting 43.5% from three-point. And Madison Dewar is shooting 47% from three-point. Outside of these two guys, though, you only have one other guy that really takes more than 1 3 per contest. He's shooting above 26% from three-point. That'd be Justin Ray, who gives you about 4.8 points per contest. It's a very top-heavy team. Bashir gives you 21.5 points per contest. Dewar throws in their 10.5, and then Jack Collins, Sheriff Valencia, these two guys combine for about 16 points per contest, and you just don't really have much else outside that. And this has been a team that's been very poor on the glass, or outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage, and while they do a solid job of making their threes, they're in the bottom 10 nationally with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage as well. And then with North Carolina A&T, this is a bunch of, they've got 2 top flight scorers in Ryan Forrest, Landon Glasper. They've been able to combine for 38 points per contest. Glasper, a little bit of a better 3-point shooter at 34.5% from 3. And A&T runs good, clean offense. They're in the top 15 in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Problem is, they are about 329th in the country with regards to their field goal shooting percentage, so that's a bit of an issue. And this team has been getting demolished on the glass. They're outside the top 3 with that regard, but I think that this is actually a good matchup for them. Other than Valencia, you really don't have anyone for Monmouth that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Nicolas Chitakidis, he's been able to give you about 10 points, 9 rebounds, a little bit over a block per contest as well, like what he's able to bring to the table. And then came on Shell, 7.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest as well. So I do think that North Carolina A&T going to be able to get things going here. It's an A&T team that certainly has been giving it up themselves with regards to the interior. They're outside the top 290 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but they've been a top 125 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. It's a Monmouth team that, with regards to their tempo, they're not going to get out of sorts with Monmouth in terms of total possessions per game, right around about 200th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this A&T team has been looking to crank tempo, top 40 in all of college basketball with this regard with Monmouth, and they have just not been able to give it a lot of defense going in general. I did set my total at 153. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it in this spot with A&T. Set them as a 3-point favorite. 801, 802 on the betting board. Merrimack is going to be on the road. They're facing off against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac, 1.5 to 2-point favorites. It's all this game between 134 to 135, and with Quinnipiac, I did set them as a favorite of 1.5 points. Here at 2+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Merrimack. I do think that Quinnipiac is one of those teams that is actually set up to be able to do a relatively rock-solid job with regards to the zone, and I think that Quinnipiac is just doing for a little bit of 3-point shooting positivity. Last year, this team shot 35% from 3-point. Maybe I'm a schmuck for thinking this, but right now they're shooting 26.4% from 3-point. That's a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. Are they down from last year with their 3-point shooting with Matt Blonich out of the fold? Yes, I don't think that they're this far down, though, but you do have Paul Otinho along with Mari Tice. These two guys down low have been able to combine for a little bit over 16 rebounds per game. They combine and give you about 27 points per game as well, and then you've also been able to get some good production with regards to a shot blocking effort from Otinho, 2 blocks per game. Now you've got back in the fold Savion Lewis, who was dealing with an injury towards the beginning part of the season, missed 4 games. Main point guard who's given you north of 5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game, has yet to make a 3 thus far this season, by the way, as well. But flip side, you do have a Merrimack team that they play super slow, super controlled. They are outside the top 350 nationally with regards to total possessions per game, and we've seen their 3-point shooting percentage come along for the ride. They're now shooting about 33.5% from the outside, and they've got the top overall scorer in this game. That would be Adam Clark, 19.5 points, 5.5 assists. He gives you about 2 steals per game, 4 boards. He's been shooting about 32% from 3-point, and Devon Savage in the backcourt. He also shoots about 37.5% from 3-point range, but Brian Entaminu has been a really nice on-ball defender that's able to give you 2 blocks, 5 rebounds per game. He's a big reason why the team has been able to hold up a little bit more down low than they have in past years, because this is always a team that's going to gamble for turnovers. They're a top 80 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but having a little bit more of something rock solid down low has allowed them to reach another level. I did set my total of 135.5. Quinnipiac not playing as quickly as they have in past seasons, but this is a Quinnipiac team that they themselves do give up a little bit from 3-point range. This is a Quinnipiac team that has been playing a little bit more up-tempo ever since they've gotten back their main man into the fold in Savion Lewis. They're a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game, and I do think that this could be a nip and tuck game that comes down to some late game fouling, and again, think that 3-point shooting positivity coming for Quinnipiac. So in on the over and at 2+ taking those points with Merrimack. 803, 804 on the betting board. Western Illinois is on the road against Morehead St. Morehead St does find themselves as a 6 to a 7-point favorite. Total on this game between 131.5 to a 132.5, and with Morehead St, I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. So here at 6+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Western Illinois. With Western Illinois, this team has been outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this just has not been the same team down low that they were a season ago. Last year, you had Adam Cisse be able to do a nice job supplying this team with north of 11 rebounds per game. You just don't have that guy this year. You've had T. Knox be able to supply you with about 6.5 rebounds per game, and Sean Smith, he's a little bit of a do-it-all guy. 11.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4.5 assists, like what he's able to bring to the backcourt, but the team has actually been a little bit better with their offense this year because Marko Militic just bombs it from 3 at 46%, 17.5 points per contest. Ryan Myers has been shooting about 36% from the outside, 14.5 points per game. And then on defense, this team just has not been able to hold up inside. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're really not generating any turnovers whatsoever. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And that's big for this Morehead St team because Morehead St is built a little bit more down low. They've got a true 7-footer who's been able to haul in there north of 5 rebounds per game, and Mr. Deontay Miles. He's been able to give this team quite a bit of production, though he's been a little bit banged up this season. Then Kenny White Jr., good versatility at about 6'7". He shoots 40% from 3, 14 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. It's a Morehead St team that leaves something to be desired with regards to their interior offense, and for that matter, they only shoot about 31% from 3-point range. That's outside the top 300 nationally. Their free throw shooting percentage, 64.3%. This is a big reason why I can't lay this number. In a late game fouling situation, they are terrible there, but this has been a Morehead St team that has been one of the top teams in all of college basketball in terms of not allowing a second chance on defense. They're allowing fewer than 8 offensive rebounds per game. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that Morehead St is going to be able to win from within, but I don't think that they're going to be able to cover this game because of that poor free throw shooting percentage. And Western Illinois outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game. I think that you get a slow down slog. I do think that you get a little bit of scoring here because both of these teams, they do have the tendency to give up wide open looks from 3-point range, and you've got a Western Illinois team shooting it a bit better from 3-point range. So in on this total over, so my total 133.5, and at north of 6, going to be one thing at those points with Western Illinois. 805, 806 on the betting board. North Dakota is on the road against South Dakota State. South Dakota State does find themselves as an 11-point favorite, totals between 155.5 to a 156, and I also set my number at an 11. Right now, I'm seeing a few 11.5s pop up. That's my buy point on North Dakota. North Dakota has one of the better mid-major scores that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Tristan Eaglestaff has been able to spy this team with north of 19 points per game. Love what he's able to bring to the table. Problem is, what else are you going to be able to get out of this team as Amar Kujajovic has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Had a little bit of a rough start to the season. He's been able to pick it up ever since then, but you don't have that main facilitator. Eaglestaff gives you about 2 assists per contest. Mir Panome has been able to give you 13 points, 5.5 boards, but he shoots about 24% from 3-point range. North Dakota flat out only shoots about 31.5% from 3-point range. That's outside the top 275 nationally, while they themselves allow you to shoot north of 36% from 3-point range. That's a bottom 50 mark nationally, but this South Dakota State team also is not the same 3-point shooting team that they've been in past seasons. Typically, when you think South Dakota State, you think of a team that's just lighting it up at 40+% from 3-point range, and they're not terrible, but they're shooting more like 34.5% from 3-point range this season. They've actually been built a little bit more from the interior, with Oscar Clough supplying this team with 17.5 points, about 12 boards per contest. It's not an amazing South Dakota State defense, but they're back in the top 225 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Matthew Morris, Joe Saylor, Kellen Gary, these 3 guys, they've been able to combine for about 32 or so points per contest. They all shoot between about 35 to 36% from 3-point range. None of these guys really give you a lot down low. As a matter of fact, the only guy outside of Clough that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, Stony Hednot, who's been able to supply about 6.5 points per contest. It is a South Dakota State team that is going to let you run good, clean offense. They're in the bottom 40 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they've had a little bit of a rough time guarding the arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 33.5% from 3-point range, but as we know, travel is a little bit of a bear with regards to this conference. And for South Dakota State, they've been feeling right at home when they've been in their friendly confines rather than when they have been on the road with regards to their defense as well. This is a South Dakota State team that, with regards to their defense in a road/court venue, just not the same, as they allow opponents to shoot only 36.3% from the floor at home, north of 44.5% on the road. So I do think that is going to cause the scoring to be a little bit more muted in this game. I did set my total at a 155. So you're at the 155.5, 156.5 in on the under, and at 11 plus, going to be taking those points with North Dakota. 807, 808 on the betting board. It is Sacramento State on the road against Northern Arizona. The Lumberjacks are an 8.5 to a 9.5 point home favorite. Total on this game between 136 to a 136.5 with Northern Arizona. I did set them as a favorite of 9.5 points. So you're at the 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Sacramento State just unable to take care of the ball outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. They play super duper slowly, as this Sacramento State team, in terms of total possessions per game, they are well outside the top 275 with that regard. As a matter of fact, both of these teams are outside the top 275 with that regard. Sacramento State, right now, they are checking in 336. So I mean, get prepared for a little bit of a turtle race in this one, but neither of these teams necessarily too effective with their defense. Well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Jacob Holt is that do-it-all guy for the Sacramento State team, and he's been solid. 6.5 boards, 16.5 points per game. He shoots 37.5% from three-point range as a 6'7", little bit of a combo player, and then EJ Neal throws in there about 8 points per game. But I mean, really, nobody outside of Jacob Holt that takes a significant amount of threes is shooting above 33% from three-point range. Lachlan Brewer has been able to actually shoot 48.5% from three-point range. He's their number 7 scorer, but outside those two guys, nobody else really shoots north of 31% from the outside. And for Sacramento State, they are outside the top 320 in terms of their free throw shooting percentage as well. So very much less than savory with that regard. You've got a Sacramento State team that has been able to do an okay job of being able to generate some turnovers, a top 125 team with that regard. But Northern Arizona has actually been very good at taking care of the ball because they've got a big man in Carson Tout who's standing 6'7". He's a little bit of a point forward. He gives you 13.5 points, is 11.5 rebounds per game in the top 10 nationally, 3.5 assists, steal 9 per contest. Meanwhile, Trent McLaughlin, he's been a top 10 scorer in all of college basketball, 23 points, throws in there 3.5 assists, 4 boards, a steal 9 per contest, shoots only about 33% from three-point range. But Monty Bowser, he has really stepped up from the outside, shooting 45% from three-point range. He's sort of become what Oakland Fort we were hoping was be. He's only been able to give the team about 6.5 points per contest, so he's been able to give you a little bit more facilitation. Northern Arizona leaves themselves open to giving up wide open looks from three. They're outside the top 275 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but they've been able to do a nice job protecting the ball, running some good, clean offense. Top 125 team in terms of their interior two-point shooting percentage. I think that'll be enough to get the job done in this one. Going to be a low possession game, so I did set my total at 133.5. I just flat out think that both of these teams really get throttled down in this one. I do think that Northern Arizona going to be able to pick up their defense from the perimeter just a touch in this one. So did set my total 133.5 in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 9 here with Northern Arizona. 809, 810 on the betting board. UMKC is on the road against North Dakota State. North Dakota State, a 9.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is between 141 to a 141.5, and with North Dakota State, set them as an 8.5 point favorite. So here at 9 plus, going to be willing to take those points with the UMKC. UMKC has just been uncharacteristically bad with their defense. There's no other way of really putting it for this UMKC team. I was expecting them to be one of the better mid-major defenses in all of college basketball. Instead, they're ranking about 243rd in the country with regards to opponents' field goal shooting percentage. They're not necessarily doing an amazing job of being able to generate turnovers either. This team really never ever does, and with their rebounding a little bit down, they're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, I do think that there are some signs of brightness that things might be able to come alive just a skoge more for them. And then on the flip side, you've got yourself a North Dakota State team that is just absolutely bombing it from three-point range. North Dakota State, right now, a top 10 group in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. They actually strangely have shot it better from three-point range on the road rather than at home. 40% from three-point range at home, 42.8% on the road. Your national leaders with regards to three-point shooting percentage, and darn near everyone on the roster is shooting north of 37% from three-point range. Everyone who has hit at least one three-pointer thus far this season that is averaging more than 1.5 points per game is shooting at least 38.3% from three. I think there's going to be a little bit of regression here. Jackson Monier has been your main man. He at right around about 6'10", gives you 19.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, unguardable at 46% three-point shooting, and his team does a nice job of not turning the ball over. Only about 10.5 turnovers per game. Now they will allow you to have good, clean offense as well. They're in the bottom 10 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. The team has also done a nice job on the glass as well because they don't allow you a lot of second chance opportunities. They're a top 75 unit in terms of percentage of an opponent's missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. rebound. They're a little bit vulnerable outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's where I think that Kansas City is going to be upholding there. You've got two main men that do a nice job in Jamar Brown along with Anderson Kopp of providing the team a little bit of everything. Kopp was a little bit banged up towards the beginning part of the season, so they've really been relying upon Jamar Brown, who's been able to give you about 15 plus points per contest, throws in their 6.5 rebounds per game. Kopp, it appears as though, is probably going to be out of the fold once again in this game, so when his absence, they've been looking a little bit more to Cameron Foss, who's been able to do a nice job of stepping it up. 9.5 points, a little bit over a steal per contest, shoots about 36.5% from 3-point range. Kashim Grady has been able to shoot 38% from 3-point range. Overall, it's a UMKC team that's a top 125 team with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, and here's the one thing that they do have going for them, which is why I'm going to be willing to take the points. With UMKC, they've been able to do a good job of being able to hit the glass. They don't allow you a lot of second chance opportunities. They're a top 75 team with regards to a defensive rebound percentage. In terms of overall rebound percentage, more in that neighborhood, about 141st, but also with this UMKC team, in a road/intracourt environment, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.7% from 3-point range. That's actually a top 45 mark in all of college basketball, though UMKC hasn't been quite defensively what I was expecting to be this season. There are glimmers of brightness. I think that they hold up defensively to be able to hang in this game. So I did set my line at an 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and did set my total 138.5. North Dakota State well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, so in on the under and in on the points with the UMKC. 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. It is Utah Valley on the road against UT Arlington. The Mavericks do find themselves as a 1-point underdog. Total on this game is 147, and with UT Arlington, I did set them as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them in this spot. I forgot to write this one up. I just flat out ran out of time, but with this Utah Valley team, they just turned the ball over a little bit too much for my own liking. Now, UT Arlington, they themselves have been outside the top 225 in terms of ball security as well, but this has been a Utah Valley team that it's really been lingering for them over the last few years, and they don't even necessarily do a great job of being able to take it away in return. They're only about 200th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With this UT Arlington team, a bunch of the same for them. They're about 200th with this regard as well, but I do think that for UT Arlington, just having Lance Ware down low is going to be so massive for them, because Lance Ware has been able to do a really good job of being able to haul in there 7+ rebounds per game, has good versatility, being able to supply 14.5 points per game as well. He gives you north of a block and a half and a steal and a half per contest as well. And then off the ball, you've got Deontay Smith, who's been able to do a really good job with his versatility. He and Brody Robinson both shoot about 41% for 3-point range. Robinson, your main facilitator, 9.3 assists per contest. Meanwhile, the team has had to learn to play without Deontay Smith for about half the season. He's been dealing with injuries. We last saw him on January 4th, so do think that he's going to be out of the fold in this one, but you've been able to get quite a bit recently out of Darius Burford in the backcourt, giving you multiple assists. He's throwing in there 8 points per contest, and Rayshawn Semester has been able to give you about 4.5 boards. He's been able to do a nice job stepping up for this team as well, starting to give you a little bit more 3-point shooting. It is a UT Arlington team that does give it up from 3-point range. They do allow opponents to shoot north of 35.5% from 3-point range, but their main weakness is not going to be unearthed by Utah Valley in this one, as Utah Valley has had some really rough 3-point shooting of their own, really the last 2 years. It has been less than savory for them. You've got Dominic Nelson, who's able to give you 14 points, 5.5 boards, but he only shoots about 25.5% from 3-point range. You've got Trayvon Leonard, who's done a really nice job in the backcourt, 6.5 points, 5.5 assists, steal and a half, shoots 39.5% from 3, and Carter Welling at 6'9", 6'10", good versatility, 2 blocks, 12.5 points, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range, but it's a Utah Valley team that as a whole, they're shooting about 31.5% from 3-point range. In terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range, they're outside the top 300 with that regard as well. They really don't take a lot of threes. Now, they've done a dominant job on the glass. They're back in the top 75 nationally with regards to rebound percentage, but for UT Arlington, numbers are a little bit warped because their first few games of the season, they were without Ware, but they're still a top 150 team with that regard as well. I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to do a rock solid job on the glass, but this has been a UT Arlington team that legitimately has been a top 75 unit in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. It's a Utah Valley team that, while they do a relatively solid job in terms of being able to hit the glass, they also are a team that in a road/intracourt environment, they only shoot 26% from 3-point range as well. So, I mean, it's just such an interesting game here. I did set my total at a 145. I do think that in the end, UT Arlington should be the favorite with the way that Utah Valley has struggled with their outside shooting on the road. So, I'm going to be in on this total under, and I'm in on UT Arlington on the money line. 813, 814 on the betting board. Arkansas State plays this to Louisiana. Louisiana is a 16.5 to a 17-point underdog, and your total on this game, it is is 147.5 to a 148, and with Louisiana, made them an 18.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay with Arkansas State. This is a Louisiana team that canned their coach in Bob Marlin mid-season. They're going through an interim coaching regime. It really hasn't done a lot of good for them. They're outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You have nothing down low to speak of for this team. They're outside the top 300 with regards to a rebound rate. You've got Mustafa El Montequil, who's been able to give you about 12.5 points, 5 boards at Siena per contest, but there's just really not a lot from the outside to speak of other than Kentrell Garnett, who's had to take on a lot of point guard facilitation duties because you just don't have that guy for this team. Michael Thomas has stepped up. He's given you a little bit more recently with about 2.5 assists per game. That's allowed Garnett to be able to get his three-point shooting percentage back up to about 36%. And if this team could get to the free throw line out of their top 4 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 84% at the free throw line, though Corin Davis, he's been in and out of the lineup all season long. That's hurt them too. But there has just not been a lot for this Louisiana team. For Louisiana, I guess you could give a little bit of credit where it is due, and that they don't get completely gashed from three-point range. But last year, they were number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, well outside the top 200 this year, and now they're 343rd in terms of overall field goal shooting percentage for opponents. They're doing an okay job of being able to generate some turnovers, but this Arkansas State team, I think, is going to be able to see some positivity with their three-point shooting, and you've already been seeing it from Taryn Todd. He's up to 38% three-point shooting, 17 points per contest. It's an Arkansas team as a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with regards to rebounding. You've only got one guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, and Rashad Marshall, but 5 different guys give you at least 4 rebounds per contest. And with this Arkansas State team, in terms of their overall rebound percentage, they are outside the top 225 with that regard, but they're also a top 75 team with regards to blocks per game. They've done a nice job on the interior, allowing opponents to shoot only about 44.5% from 2-point range. That's the top 35 mark in all of college basketball, and Arkansas State has really been able to ratchet up that defense. Last year, that was their main kryptonite. This year, they do rank in the top 125 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is still a nice flowing Arkansas State offense, despite the fact that they're outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, as they knife the ball inside, top 150 team in terms of being able to get the ball in the basket, and this is an Arkansas State team that's willing to fly. They're in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game. For Louisiana, it's been all over the place with regards to their tempo. They now are going through the coaching regime change, and they've been playing a little bit faster recently, about 283rd overall for the season in terms of total possessions per game, but they seem to get sped up on the road, playing about 4.5 to 5 possessions more per game on the road rather than at home. So semi-total 152.5 in on the over, and one to lay up to 18 here with Arkansas State. 8:15, 8:16 on the betting board. You've got Oral Roberts on the road against South Dakota. I wrote this game up as South Dakota is finding themselves as a 9 to 9.5 point favorite, and your total is between 172.5 to a 173.5. I wrote up the under in this spot. I recognize that South Dakota has been a machine to the over this far this season, and these two teams are terrible at guarding the three-point line. Both of these teams outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but it's not like South Dakota's laying the world on fire from three-point range. They're outside the top 225 with this regard. They're lighting it up at a three-point shooting percentage number of about 32.5%, and then you've got an Oral Roberts team that they've been able to get quite a bit out of Isaac McBride. He's been able to supply the team with 17 points per contest, but you don't have much out of the low post play of this team because they've been dealing with the injury to Sam Elajiki, who was really the lone guy on the roster that was able to give you north of 4 rebounds per game. He's been out for quite a while, so that's been a bit of an issue for this team. You do have JoJo Moore, who's trying to give you more, 2 assists, 3.5 boards, 7.5 points per contest, shoots only about 31.5% from three-point range. Jalen Miller, Jackson Skipper, both of these guys have shot north of 40% from 3, but Skipper's been dealing with a little bit of injury as well, so it's a banged-up Oral Roberts team that still is shooting about 38% from three-point range. That's the top 75 mark in all of college basketball, but that said, they also turned the ball over darn near 13 times per contest. They've been unable to take care of that, and for the South Dakota team, it's certainly not a defense that you're going to write home about. Well, it's inside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you've been able to have Chase Forte really be the forte of this team. A steal and a half, 16 points per contest. He only shoots all about 23.5% from three-point range, and out of your top 6 scorers, one of them shoots above 33.5% from three-point range. Paul Bruns, who gives you 9.5 points per contest. It has been a South Dakota team has really given it up from the outside, and on the interior, they're about 250th in the country in terms of two-point shooting percentage, where these two teams really do not shine as well as on the offensive glass as well. I mean, these are two teams that, with regards to allowing opponents to get an offensive rebound, they are outside the top 325 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, so that's been a little bit of an issue. Now, to the credit of South Dakota, they're a top 150 unit in terms of generating turnovers. Oral Roberts has had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball, but Oral Roberts does a little bit of a better job on the inside rather than the outside with regards to their defense, so I do think think that you're going to start to see a little bit of a trickle down with regards to these totals in South Dakota games. I set my total at a 169, so you're at 173 plus in on the under. I wrote that up. And with South Dakota, I did make them a 9-point favorite. Here at an 8.5 to a 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay that to go along with this total under 817, 818 on the betting board. Tarleton St plays us to Cal Baptist. The Lancers of Cal Baptist, who find themselves as a favorite of 3.5 to 4 points. Total on this game, it is 132, and with Cal Baptist, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points. So you're at the 4. It's really the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Tarleton St still dead last in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but they're starting to get a little bit healthier. They were without their transfer from Baylor earlier in the season, Juan Grimes, who's become one of their main rotation players. He's been able to give you about 9 points per contest since he's come back. Jordan Mazzell has been really inconsistent for this team, but Boo Boo Benjamin, 16 points, 5 boards for a Tarleton St team that is actually a top 55 unit in terms of the 3-point shooting percentage. Their shooting is collective right around 37% from 3. Here's the issue. Out of 364 D1 teams, they rank 364th in 3-point attempts per game because they're turning the ball over 19 times per contest, and they're not necessarily up-tempo to start with. They're outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got Ronnie Harrison, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest, but he's been missing for quite a bit. You've got Kenton Briso, who's come back. He's been able to slide the team with 14.5 points per contest. He missed half the season, but he's all good to go now, and he's shooting 48.5% from 3-point range. He and Benjamin, as a matter of fact, they're combined to shoot about 45.5% from 3-point range. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a tick downward there. This is also a Tarleton St team that's outside the top 220 with regards to rebound percentage, and for Cal Baptist, they should be able to win that battle down low. I've been liking what I've been seeing. The transfer from Northwestern State and LSU and Kendall Coleman, good versatility at 6'8", 11.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. Dominique Daniels, he only shoots about 27.5% from the outside, but he's supplying 21 points per contest, doing a nice job getting to the free throw line where he shoots 85% there. And Martell Williams shoots 96% of the charity stripe, 9.5 points per contest. It is a Cal Baptist team that they're going to give up open looks from 3-point range. You're outside the top 310 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but again, with Tarleton St, I think what comes up must come down with regards to that 3-point shooting percentage. I think the Cal Baptist, who's right now shooting 30% from 3, they're outside the top 320 with that regard. They should see a little bit of a tick word up for that as well. Cal Baptist, top 125 team with regards to being able to generate offensive rebounds as well. I think that this is going to be a rather controlled game, but Cal Baptist, they do a relatively solid job taking care of the ball, only about 11 turnovers per game. The bread and butter of Tarleton St is being able to generate turnovers, so I think that this is a good spot for Cal Baptist. I'm willing to lay up to 4 with them, and did set them as a 132.5. I do think that this game is going to be close enough for late game fouling, going to be a physical game, so lots of trips to the free throw line, in on the over, and willing to lay with Cal Baptist. 819, 820 on the betting board. You've got Portland State on the road against Northern Colorado, and Northern Colorado does find themselves as a 9-point favorite. Total on scheme between 152.5 to 153, and said Northern Colorado as a favorite of 9.5 points. So at the 9, it's maximum willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a Portland State group that just has not been very consistent whatsoever with regards to their tempo. They were playing super fast to begin the season, really ever since the beginning of the month of December, outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game. And for Portland State, this has not been a team that has been very good around the perimeter, whether that be with their 3-point shooting offense or their 3-point shooting defense, outside the top 225 with both of those regards, as this is a team that they really don't take a lot of threes. If you look at percentage of shots that come from 3-point range, Portland State outside the top 310 with that regard. They're headlined by their point guard and Q Myers, who's been able to do a really nice job giving you 7.5 points, 6.5 assists per contest. Does get loose with the ball though, 3.5 turnovers per game, and that's really this entire Portland State team. They're outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. They've been able to do a really good job of hitting the offensive glass. So in terms of offensive rebound percentage, this has been a top 85 team in all of college basketball in that regard, as you've been able to get between your top 3 scorers, Sherry Miller Jr., Jalen Henderson, Isaiah Johnson, they combined about 8.5 offensive rebounds per game. They combine as a whole for right in that pocket of about 14 to 15 rebounds per game. So a lot of them are on the offensive side of things. Now, that in turn leads to them giving up a lot of second and third chances as well on the glass. But Henderson has been able to give you 14 points per contest. He's shooting 36.5% from 3-point range. And Terry Miller has been able to give you 9.5 points per game. Ishmael El Habib, he has been missing for quite a while, so that has been hurting this backcourt just a little bit. Meanwhile, on the flip side, you've got a Northern Colorado team that this is always one of your more efficient mid-major offenses in all of college basketball. They're back outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Shock, surprise, surprise. But this team has really been able to get it humming on offense. They are a top 55 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis overall. But if you look just at their home numbers, this is a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And they've overcome a lot of losses. They lose Dalton Connect 2 seasons ago, St. Thomas last year, but they keep finding that do-it-all guy. A little bit less of a scorer this year, but you're Teron Riley, 9 points, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists, chips in there a little bit over a steal per contest, only shoots about 33% from three-point range. This is a team that, they're solid with their three-point shooting percentage at 36%. It's not like they're a flamethrower from three, like Marcel McCreary, Zach Block, pair of guys that give you 8.5 points per contest. They're really your lone two guys that shoot above 35.5% from the outside that see meaningful minutes, but Langston Reynolds gives you 17.5 points per contest, does a nice job getting the ball inside. This team is very good at taking care of the ball as well. They play at an up-tempo pace, and yet they only turn the ball over 11 times per contest, and they're a top 10 team nationally with regards to two-point shooting percentage, north of 61%. Isaiah Hawthorne, a lot to thank for that. He's been able to give the team 16.5 points per contest. Throw in there Brock Wisnine, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest on his two-point shots. He shoots 67.5%. I do think the Northern Colorado going to be able to get the job done from the inside. This has been a Northern Colorado team that, by the way, has been one of your best defensive rebound rate teams in all of college basketball as well. They're only allowing 7.5 offensive rebounds per game. They're a top 50 team with that regard, and this is a Portland State team that when they do hit the road, they do see their struggles with regards to their defense, as their three-point shooting defense certainly does go in decline, as at home this has been a team that has been allowing teams to shoot from three-point range right around about 28%, goes to 37% on the road, though they do shoot it themselves a little bit better from three-point range when they're on the road. Did semi-total at a 157.5 here, at 152.5, 153 in on the over, and I'm going to lay up to 9 here with Northern Colorado. 821, 822 on the betting board. Southeast Missouri State on the road against Tennessee Tech. Tennessee Tech does find themselves as 2 to 2.5 point favorites on this game between 144 to 144.5, and I did set my line at a 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Southeast Missouri State. A little bit of a tough spot for them because they had to play that game on Monday, so it's a bit of a tight turnaround for them. Meanwhile, you do have yourself a bunch of Tennessee Tech that I've been liking what I've been seeing out of the offense. They shoot in the mid-30s as a collective from three-point range. You've got two guys that really headline things, Rodney Johnson along with Jalen Johnson. Johnson squared have been able to combine for about 27 points per contest. Rodney Johnson is shooting about 47.5% from three-point range. Jalen Johnson is your main facilitator with 5 assists, 1.8 steals per contest. Now, where the team lacks is Elmo. They're outside the top 280 in terms of their rebound percentage. This is by the fact that Rodney Johnson gives you 5.5 rebounds per game, and I like what I'm seeing out of Daniel Igbenegbu. He's been able to give you a block, 6.5 rebounds per game, a little bit of versatility, shoots about 32.5% from three-point range, and this is a Tennessee Tech team that they keep you off the free throw line, one of the most disciplined teams in all of college basketball. Now, in turn, that leads to them not getting to the free throw line, as well as they're a top 20 team in terms of not allowing free throws on a per possession basis. They're in the bottom 20 in terms of getting to the free throw line, so not going to have a lot of follow-thons with them, but for the Southeast Missouri State team, it's all around Teddy Washington, what he's been able to provide. Very versatile piece coming in from Texas A&M. Corpus Christi, 15 points, 5.5 boards, steal and a half, 2.5 assists per contest. Only shoots about 31% from three-point range, as this is not the strength of the Southeast Missouri State team. They only shoot about 31.5% from three, but they also don't allow you to hit threes as well. This is a top 15 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They keep their opponents off the glass. They don't generate a lot of offensive rebounds themselves, but they don't allow you to get a lot of offensive rebounds as well. This is a team that's going to be willing to put you on the free throw line. They're outside the top 300 in terms of free throw attempts per possession on defense, but they're a top 100 team with regards to opponents' field goal shooting percentage as well. You've got the ancillary pieces like BJ Ward, Rob Martin. These guys have been able to combine for about 21 points per contest in the backcourt. They've been able to get Demarion Walkup to be able to give you a little bit of something as well. Shoots about 33% from three, 5 points per contest. So interesting scenario here, but I do think that Tennessee Tech runs some good, clean offense, finds a way to be able to get the job done and get to the free throw line. I did set my line at a 4.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 142.5. Neither of these teams playing at a very rapid pace, and we've seen the SEMO defense do a really good job of holding up from the outside. So I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay with Tennessee Tech. 823, 824 on the betting board. UT Martin is going to be playing against Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois is an underdog of 6 points total on this game. It is 135.5 to 136.5, and with Eastern Illinois, I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with UT Martin. UT Martin has been able to really come along for the ride with their defense, top 200 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for UT Martin, they really don't have a lot from the outside. This is a team that, as a collective, they are shooting well outside the top 200 with regards to their overall three-point shooting percentage, but with this UT Martin team as well, they've done a nice job of being able to hit the glass. They've been a top 150 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and I do think that that's going to be able to win out in this case. On the flip side, you do have yourself a Eastern Illinois team that they just aren't doing a whole heck of a lot other than generating turnovers. They've been a top 100 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they're outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They are shooting about 30.5% from three-point range. They attempt most of their shots from inside the arc. They're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of of their shots that come from inside the three-point line, as you do have Cooper Jacoby, who's been able to do a nice job with his 6'6" versatility, 13.5 points, 9 boards per contest. Does shoot 32% from 3, and Zion Fruster has shot 40.5% from 3-point range. You've got guys that are able to shoot it okay from 3-point range. Their top scorer, Nikhil Shelton, not one of them, 17 points per contest, shoots only about 29% from 3-point range. But for this Eastern Illinois team, they do a tremendous job being able to generate turnovers. They just don't have a lot else to be able to speak of. And this UT Martin team, I do think is going to be able to do a relatively solid job of taking care of the ball. In this case, they brought in a lot of junior college transfers that have really been able to step up their game as the season has went along. Jose Guruyan has been able to give you 15 points per contest, and Terrence Gunyard right now is shooting about 39.5% from 3-point range. Guruyan is shooting 40.5% from 3, but for Gunyard, since the beginning of the month of December, he is averaging well north of 18 points per contest. And then down low, you've got someone in Vladimir Saldirsday who's been able to give you 9 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. He's able to pop it from 3-point range as well. And to Zhina Borakovich, hopefully I said that correctly, he's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. I gave him my best stab on that one. He's been in and out of the lineup, so that makes it even more difficult. But this UT Martin team, allowing opponents to shoot less than 30.5% from 3-point range, that's been a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. They've been a top 125 team with regards to rebound rate. Even though this is a team that they're prone to turnovers, they're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. I do think that they get the job done, though. This is going to be a low-scoring slog. What these two teams do well defensively, these two teams do not do very well on offense. So, I mean, it's a battle of strength versus weakness. And I do think that with UT Martin, their strengths are just a little bit better than that of Eastern Illinois. So, did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with UT Martin. I made my total 132.5. I'm also in on this total under as well. 825, 826 on the betting board. Lindenwood is on the road against Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana is a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 138.5 to 139.5. And with Southern Indiana, I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5. This is a Lindenwood team that certainly has had their warts, to say the least, and they're one of the shortest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. So Stephen Olawani is able to give this Southern Indiana team right around 7 rebounds per game. Should have his way down low, even though you do have Jadis Jones for this Lindenwood team, supplying the team with about 11 points, 6 boards per contest, has the ability to pop it from 3, but is only shooting about 25% from 3 in Lindenwood. They're outside the top 300 in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. They're shooting 29.5% as a collective. They allow opponents to shoot well north of 33% from 3-point range as well, and it just gets magnified even further when they are away from home, as this is a Lindenwood team that they shoot themselves 24.4% from 3-point range in a road/shoot-to-court environment. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. This is a Lindenwood team that they allow you to shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range on the road. Now, it is a Southern Indiana team that's been dealing with an injury to Jalen Randall. That is one of their top scorers who's been able to give the team 14-plus points per contest, and ever since he's been out, really since the turn of the new year, this has went straight down the toilet bowl for Southern Indiana, but they do still have some guys in the backcourt that are able to be reliable. Jack Melky has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get good facilitation of Jack Champion. He only gives you 4 points per contest, but throws in their 4 assists per game. This is a team that, as a whole, they're still shooting about 34.5% from 3-point range. Now, Randall was shooting 43% from 3, but you've got Damani Harrison, who shoots about 40.5% from the outside, throws in there about 13.5 points per contest. Sam Kudai has been able to give you about 6 points. He is able to give you about 2 assists per game, as well as a Southern Indiana team that they themselves are well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, but they've done a nice job being able to generate about 13.5 turnovers per game. They're a top 150 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and with the way that Lindenwood just has not been able to get any offense going on the road whatsoever, do you think that Southern Indiana gets the job done in a little bit more of a slog? Set my total 136.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 here with Southern Indiana. 827, 828 on the betting board. SIU Edwardsville is on the road against Tennessee St. Tennessee St, a favorite of 1 to 2 points on scheme. It is between 141 to 142, and with Tennessee St, I did set them as favored 2.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Tennessee State needs to avoid fouling because this team is right now in the bottom 25 in all of college basketball and fouls committed on a per possession basis, but this is an SIU Edwardsville team that has their shooting troubles as well, as you've got Rayshawn Taylor, who's been absolutely tremendous in this backcourt, as he's able to give you a bit of everything, throws in there 5 boards, 4 assists to go along with his 18 points per game. He shoots about 34% from 3-point range, but team as a whole, they shoot 62.5% the free throw line. That is a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. Pretty solid on the boards. This has been a team that's been in the top 125 with regards to rebound percentages, despite the fact that Joe Valeri, who they were relying upon down low for about 6.5 rebounds per game, has been out of the lineup really since game game number 4 of the season. But Brian Taylor, 4 boards, 2.5 assists, 11.5 points per contest. I've been loving what I've been seeing as well out of Miles Thompson, who's able to give you some versatility with about 4.5 points, 4 boards per contest with this Edwardsville team. 2, they're not necessarily a team that is going to put you under duress with regards to your own 3-point shooting percentage. They do a good job of cutting you off from the inside. This team is a top 20 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though, they're going to give it up a little bit more. They're allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood of about 32.5% from 3-point range. Now, strangely, they allow you to shoot about 37.5% from 3-point range at home, more like about 30% in a roadside shoot court environment. But that said, this is a Tennessee State team that they're going to be looking to onside charge. They're going to be looking to get to the rim, and they themselves fell a ton as Tennessee State just very reckless with that regard. But you've been able to get about 16 points per contest and a little bit from the outside out of Brandon Weston. He's also been able to throw in there about 5.5 rebounds per game. Now, it's a Tennessee State team that they're shooting as a collective 29.5% from 3-point range, but also a team that in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, they've been in the top 35 nationally as well. As you've got a holes greater than some of its parts rebounding approach. Your main guy is Amir Langlis, who's come in. He's been able to give the team about 6.5 rebounds per game, but he's been dealing with injury for about half of the season. Ronnie Jessamy, who was injured towards the beginning part of the season, he's come back though. He, Weston, along with Aaron Akuma, these guys have all been able to give you between about 5 to 5.5 rebounds per game. You also get out of Jessamy a little bit over a block per contest. Josh Ugandule, who comes on over from Iowa, he's been able to throw in there about 4 boards per contest. Just not a lot of 3-point shooting to speak of outside of what you've been able to get out of Antonio Lorick, who's been able to give you about 6.5 points, shoots 40% from 3-point range. But I do think that in the end, in terms of a strength-on-strength battle where both of these teams are terrible at the free throw line, but Tennessee State is going to make it physical. Now, I do think that this is going to be a game that gets cranked up tempo a little bit more and played a little bit more to Tennessee State's liking. So I did set my total 144.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Tennessee State. 829, 830 on the betting board. Liberty is playing us to UTEP. UTEP does find themselves as an underdog of 9.5 points, seeing some 9s out there as well. Totals between 134 to 134.5, and with the UTEP, I did set them as the underdog of 9.5 points. So here at a 9, I'm going to be willing to lay with Liberty. Liberty, a top 25 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and for UTEP, their bread is buttered by being able to generate turnovers. Top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and we've seen a massive rise with their 3-point shooting percentage. Last year, they were shooting hardly above 30% as a collective. This year, they're in the top 75 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. This despite the fact that your top 2 scorers, Otis Frazier along Corey Camper, they combine for just under 26 points per contest. Between the two of them, they're shooting about 32.5% from 3-point shot. They combine for 4.2 steals per contest as well, one of the top marks that you're going to find for any duo in all of college basketball. And UTEP, they themselves do turn the ball over 13 times per game. So while they do a nice job of taking it away, they do give it away a little bit as well, but it's more of the ancillary pieces. Like Devin Barnes has come in from the WAC. He's been able to give you 11 points, shoots 41% from 3-point range. Ahmad Bynum continues to shoot 53% from 3-point range. I think that is going to be going downward, but this is also a UTEP team that's outside the top 275 with regards to rebound percentage, as right now your main man has been Kevin Kalu, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and Liberty should be able to just completely light them ablaze down low. This is a Liberty team that they do not allow a lot of second chance opportunities. Now Liberty, they themselves are outside the top 150 with regards to rebound percentage, but I have to like the versatility that you get out of both Owen Aquino along with Zach Cleveland. These two guys have been able to combine for about 21.5 points per contest. Both give between 6.8 and 7 rebounds per game. With regards to facilitation, you get tremendous facilitation out of Zach Cleveland with about 5 assists per contest. Aquino throws in there 2.5 assists per game. Neither of these guys really pop it from 3-point range, but that's why you've got Taylon Peter along with Caden Menethy. These two guys have been able to combine to shoot about 41% from 3-point range, 25 points per game between the two of them. And then Colin Porter being able to give you 4.3 assists per contest for a Liberty team that's outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but they only turn the ball over 10.5 times per contest. Top 10 unit in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Top 50 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that Liberty finds a way to be disciplined, get the job done, and protect the ball. So I did set my line at 9.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 9 with Liberty. With regards to total, set mine at 131.5. I think that UTEP is going to see their 3-point shooting start to dry up a little bit more. I think that they're going to have a tough time cracking this Liberty defense. So I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with old Liberty. 831, 832 on the betting board. It's Montana on the road against Weber State. Weber State is a 2.5 point favorite. Your total on this game between 146 and 146.5. And with a Weber State, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points. So here at 2.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Montana. For Montana, it's been a very uneven season for them to say the least, but Weber State is outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Montana's outside the top 250 as well. But Money Williams, well, he has been money for this team. 14 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, per contest while shooting 36% from three-point range. And it's a Montana team that they've actually shot it better from three-point range on the road rather than at home. They shoot as collective about 31.5% from three-point range overall, but they shoot a little bit north of 32% when they're away from home. Montana's not going to give you any second chance opportunities whatsoever. They're outside the top 320 in terms of their overall offensive rebound percentage. Now, they are outside the top 250 in terms of overall rebound percentage. They only allow about 10 offensive rebounds per game, but they just don't do a great job on the glass in general. Your main guy has been Joe Pridgeon, who's offered some nice versatility, 13.7 boards. He's been able to pop it from three, only about a 30% clip, but he gives you a little bit of something there, and this has been a Montana team that they've been able to do an okay job with regards to perimeter defense. They're allowing opponents to shoot 32% from three-point range. That's a top 175 mark in all of college basketball. It does go very much downward when they're on the road, though. This is a Montana team that they only allow you to shoot 25% from three-point range at home, 39.7% in a road/neutral court environment, but I mean, this is a Weber State team that has not done a great job of being able to guard the arc either. For Weber State, they're allowing teams to shoot from three-point range at home 44.8%. That is a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. They're clearly missing their main guy in Dylan Mitchell from the season ago, though you have been able to have Blake Stret be able to come in, and he's been a nice threat for this team as he's been able to supply this team with in that neighborhood about 16.5 points per contest, throws in their 5 boards. He only shoots about 28% from three-point range, but that's why you've got Nigel Burris, a nice sharpshooter who shoots 45% from three, throws in their 8.5 points per contest, and have a lot of nice go-to scorers on the team. Miguel Tomley along with Tyson Kaler, both have been able to give you about 11 points per contest. Kaler gives you about 5.5 boards and is shooting 41% from three-point range, and Weber State as a whole, they shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. They don't turn the ball over a ton, but they don't force a lot of turnovers themselves. But both of these teams rough with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, both at home for Weber State and on the road for Montana. So I do think that you're going to be able to get points up on the board. Both of these teams, they do play at rates that are well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game. So interesting scenario here. I did set my total 146 here at the 146.5. I'm in on this total under, and with Montana getting north of 2, going to be willing to take those points. 833, 834 on the betting board. It is Rutgers. They are on the road. They're facing off against Nebraska. Nebraska does find themselves as a favorite of 9 to 9.5 points. 145.5 to 146 is your total. With Rutgers, they've been playing very much significantly faster when they've been on the road rather than at home. A mid-tempo team when they've been at home. On the road, they've actually been a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game. Much of that is due to the fact that in non-conference play, they were really speeding themselves up. They have slowed down ever since conference play began, so I do think that Nebraska's defense is going to win out. I'm in on the under. I did set my total more around a 141, and with this Nebraska team, they're a top 50 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been really good at guarding the arc at home, allowing opponents to shoot just 26.6% from three-point range at home. It's a Rutgers team that does clock in outside the top 130 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well. We have seen a significant fall-off with this regard away from home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from three-point range. You now have a healthy Dylan Harper, though. He looked much better a few nights ago against UCLA, was able to get to double figures after previous 2 games. I believe that he had a combined 6 points. That was less than savory, to say the least, as he and Ace Bailey have been able to combine for 39 points per contest. Both shoot about 34.5% from three-point range. Bailey chips in their 7.5 rebounds per game. Harper, 4.5 assists, a steal, 5 boards per contest out of him. And then Lathon Somerville has been able to come along as a big man, giving you 4.5 rebounds per game. But Harper and Bailey are the only 2 guys on the roster that give you north of 4.4 rebounds per game. And that's where I think that Nebraska is going to be able to exploit this Rutgers team. For Nebraska down low, you've got a guy that's able to give you in the neighborhood about 6.5 rebounds and 7.5 points per contest in Berkey Buetiesel, and then Bryce Williams has been that main scorer. 19 points per game, throws in their 2.5 assists per contest from three-point range. He's been stroking it at about a 40% clip. Connor Essegian does as well, but you just don't know what you're going to be able to get night in, night out of Connor Essegian. Like, you take a look at the last 6 games that this guy has played, it's been all over the place as he has scored 2, 7, 20, 2, 6, and 17 points. So you either get really good Connor Essegian or you get really bad Connor Essegian. There's no in the middle Connor Essegian in this one. Rolly Worcester has been able to throw in there about 2.5 assists per contest, and that's one gripe that I do have about Nebraska. They don't have that main facilitator. This has not been a team that's really been able to supply themselves with a lot of offensive rebounds either. They just do a nice job of preventing teams from really getting an offensive rebound themselves. It's a Nebraska unit that has been significantly better with regards to their defense at home rather than on the road, and I do think that that is going to take hold here. And for Nebraska, they've been really throttling down their tempo while Rutgers has been speeding it up. Rutgers, once again, playing in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game when they're away from home. This is a Nebraska unit, though, that in terms of their total possessions per game, a little bit of a departure from what we've seen in past years, more around about 114th in the country. So, circumstance where I did set Nebraska as a 9-point favorite, and a 9.5 plus that will be my buy point on Rutgers. And with regards to the total, set mine at a 141 in on the under, 835, 836 on the betting board. Northwestern plays us to Maryland, and Maryland is a favorite of 1 to 1.5 points on the road. Total on this game is 141.5. I did set my total at a 136.5. I do like the under. Northwestern has been playing at a very slow and controlled pace, albeit they're a top 15 team once again with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they're about 230th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Maryland has clocked in more in that neighborhood, about 125th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They sped themselves up, and they're able to control things down low because you've got the Queen and Derek Queen, and he has been able to do a really nice job of teaming up with Julian Reese for about 17 or so rebounds per game. You've got Queen giving you 16 points per game, not a guy that's going to stroke it from three, but just a really nice interior post game. Jacoby Gillespie has been able to slide this team with 4.5 assists, shoots 42% from three-point range, and Selton Miguel is now shooting north of 40% from three-point range as well. You can still use more out of Sean Harris-Smith, who's been a big giant disappointment for the team, but overall, this is a Maryland team that does check in the top 35 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 5 team in the country in terms of getting clean looks, in that they have fewer than 2 of their shots blocked per game, and this team has been a top 50 team with regards to their rebound percentage as well, so they've been able to excel on so many different things. But with this Northwestern team, you've got one heck of a duo, as Brooks Barnheiser has been able to come back after he was injured for the first few games of the season, and he's been a takeover guy, being able to give the team 18 points, 2.5 steals, 4 assists per contest. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3, but that's why you've got Nick Martinelli shooting 41.5% from 3, 20 points, 5.5 boards per contest, and then Jalen Leach along with Ty Berry have been nice ancillary pieces. Berry just still not fully back from that injury, only giving you about 7 points per contest, but shooting 36.5% from three-point range. Leach gives you a little bit of facilitation as well. And this has been a Northwestern team that's been a top 45 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Maryland, that was one of their bread and butters last season, and for Maryland, they're still doing a relatively solid job of being able to generate some turnovers, not quite at the same level when they're on the road, as on the road they're generating a turnover on about 17.5% of possessions, north of 23.5% at home, but they're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with this regard as well. So I do think both teams might uncharacteristically turn the ball over a little bit, because both of these teams do a nice job of taking care of the ball. Both of these teams in the top 45 with regards to generating turnovers, but I do think that home court advantage going to be very big for Northwestern in this one. That's going to be able to keep them lively, but in the end, I just flat out think that Maryland's a better team. I think that they win the battle from within. Northwestern outside the top 100 with regards to rebound rate, so I did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the small number here with Maryland, and with regards to total in on the under, set my total 136.5. 837, 838 on the betting board. Montana State is on the road against Idaho State. Idaho State is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 136.5 to 137.5, and with Idaho State made them a 2-point favorite. Right now, seeing some 1.5s out there, I'd be willing to lay the 1.5. I would rather lay a 1.5 rather than take a 2.5 in this ordeal. As I just like the way that Idaho State has been able to hunker down. They've been able to play their style, being outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and I just believe that they have the best low post player in this game as well. As you've been able to get darn near a double-double out of Jake O'Neal. He's been able to give you 13.5 points, 10.5 boards per contest, and then Dylan Darling, the transfer that comes in from Washington State, he missed a little bit of time due to injury, but he's back in full force, being able to give you 16 points, 5.5 assists, steal and a half per contest for a Idaho State team that 12.2 turnovers per game doesn't sound too bad, but with how slowly they play, that's a little bit of an issue. But what this team does a really good job of, they just hit the boards, and they hit the boards hard. This Idaho State team right now, in terms of rebound percentage, they are number 12 in all of college basketball. And if you look at percentage of their missed shots that they do pull in as an offensive rebound, it's just absolutely remarkable what we've been seeing. They're number 6 in all of college basketball. Montana State is just not going to be able to match up with that. This is a Montana State team that they really have no way of being able to get offensive rebounds. They're 361st in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they pull in as an offensive rebound. Max Igbompolo has been able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. Now, you do like the fact that you've got versatility with someone that stands right around 6'6", and Brandon Garaki, who's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with right around about 8 points per contest, has some size, and from three-point range, he's shooting at about 40.5% from three. As Montana State as a whole, they shoot 34% from three. They're okay at generating turnovers, but you can tell that without having Robert Biltford tough in the backcourt from a season ago that has really fallen off a cliff, and what this Montana State team does a really good job of is being able to guard the 3-point line, top 25 unit in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but leave a lot to be desired on the inside outside the top 200 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. And this is an Idaho State team that they really don't settle for a lot of threes. They have been able to do a nice job of being able to dominate, getting those second and third chances. And I do think that with having some of these guys like an Isaiah Griffin coming in, hauling in their 4 boards, giving you 12 points per contest, the ancillary pieces like an AJ Brujan being able to give you 7 points, shoots 34% from 3-point range. They have just enough to be able to get the job done on their home floor. This is also a nice elevation spot as well. So I did set my line at 2. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 here with Idaho State. Did set my total 134 as well. I do think that this game is going to have a lot of domination on the boards from Idaho State, and that'll allow them to control the tempo. So in on the under to go along to Idaho State. 839, 840 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. Abilene Christian is on the road against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a 14-point favorite, and your totals between 143.5 to 144. And with Abilene Christian, I wrote them up. I set them as a 9-point underdog. Abilene Christian is averaging about 10 points more per 100 possessions, by the way, on the road rather than at home. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they've been significantly better on the road. This is still an Abilene Christian team that's in the top 8 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That is the main forte of this team. And you've got Leonardo Betol, who I think is in for some positivity from the outside, as this team is shooting 29% from 3-point range. That is well outside the top 330 in all of college basketball, but Biatola has been able to give you about 14.5 points, or is in their 4 boards, steal per contest, shooting just 20% from 3-point range. Hunter Jack Madden in last year shot 40% from 3. He's been down to about 31% from the outside this season. Now, it's a Grand Canyon team that they're playing much more like Abilene Christian right now. They're outside the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but this has been a top 40 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, and where Grand Canyon is getting the lion's share of their scoring is at the free throw line. They are actually a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of free throw attempts per game. They themselves are turning the ball over 12.5 times per contest, and Tyron Grant Foster is starting to pick it up a little bit. He's right now the top scorer with 13.5 points per game, and again, this isn't how he shot the last few games, but overall for the season, he's shooting 17.2% from 3-point range. 17.2 is not great. Colin Moore has been able to give you more. He's shooting 40% from 3, throws in there 2 steals, 7 points per contest, and I will throw in there. Grant Foster has been able to give you 2 steals per contest, a block and a half per game as well, but less than savory to say the least there. Jacoby Coles, who comes over from TCU, he's throwing in there about 13.5 points per contest, and this is still a very good team on the glass. This is a Grand Canyon team that's still a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. Locke Ward has been able to give you 4.5 boards, throws in there 9.5 points per game. Duke Brandon, 9.5 points, 9 boards. He's able to give you darn near a block per contest as well, but I do think that with Abilene Christian, even though they're going to lose the battle down low, I think that they're just a little bit better at their style than Grand Canyon is, and with Grand Canyon's massive fall off with regards to their offense, I think that you're in for a little bit of a slog in this one. I did set my total at a 143. Right now, seeing that total at 144 and on the under, and with my write-up, I am taking those points with Abilene Christian. A whole is greater than the sum of its parts team that goes about 10 or so deep. 841, 842 on the betting board. UC Santa Barbara plays us at UC Riverside. Riverside is an underdog of 6 points here. Total on this game between 139 to 140, and for UC Riverside, I did set them as a 5.5 point underdog. Going to be willing to take the 6+ here with Riverside. I don't know what it is about this UC Santa Barbara team, but it's been like this for a few years. They actually play better with regards to their defense when they're on the road rather than at home. They're giving up more than 3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. Now for the Santa Barbara offense, they do score about 9.5 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than on the road. So it only holds true with regards to defense, but has been a little bit befuddling to me. This is a Santa Barbara team that has dealt with some injuries to begin the season, but now you've got Colin Smith back in the fold after he was missing for a little bit of time, comes in for Vanderbilt, but he's been a disappointment, only giving you about 4 points per contest, just about 37.5% from 3, and Stephon Swenson has done a nice job coming in from Stetson, the old Hatters, and being able to get to see him 12.5 points, 4.5 assists, shooting about 47.5% from 3-point range, and this is a Santa Barbara team that is a legitimate top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 50 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with Kenny Poto down low, give you about 7.5 boards, 12.5 points per game. Additionally, you've had Jason Fondant do a nice job stuffing the stat sheet, 2 assists, 11.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range. But for UC Riverside, Braden Hargris, I think, is going to be able to keep this team very lively in this game. For Hargris, he's done a really nice job of supplying the team with 19 points, 4 assists per contest. Got a little bit more help out of Isaiah Moses last year, who's down to about 11.5 points per contest, isn't playing as much on the ball, but is still giving you about 3 assists per contest. But it's all about the Pickens in the backcourt. Nate Pickens shooting 40% from three. He's able to give you about 9 points per contest. It's a Riverside team that does a pretty solid job not taking too bad of shots, and they've done a solid job of being able to take care of the ball. They only turn the ball about 11.5 times per contest, but they only generate about 11 turnovers per game. Joel Armatrading has been able to help this team out down low as they've been a top 100 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. They only allow opponents to grab about 9 offensive rebounds per game, and with Armatrading, not necessarily a go-to scorer or anything like that with about 6.5 points per contest, but does give you about 6.5 rebounds, 1.3 blocks per contest. This Riverside team has been able to do a much better job on the interior with that regard, and this is a UC Riverside team that they're another team that they seem to perform a little bit better with regards to defense when they're away from home rather than at home. At home, they allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from three-point range. On the road, they allow opponents to shoot 31% from three. Could be because pretty much everyone in the Big West outside of Hawaii is in the state of California, but I'm willing to roll with the road team in this one in Riverside. Set them as a 5.5 point underdog, so we'll take those points. Set by total 135.5. Santa Barbara outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions game. Riverside not running and gunning it themselves, so in on the under and the points with Riverside. 843, 844 on the betting board. Portland plays us a Pacific. Pacific is a 1.5 point underdog. Totals between 146.5 to 147, and I set Portland as a 2-point favorite. Not willing to go any further than this 1.5 because, man, this Portland team is grody, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Pacific. What else is grody is the fact that this team shoots less than 30% from three-point range, and I do think that Dave Smart is a relatively solid coach. He comes in after he was very successful at Carleton College out in Canada for like 15 plus years, and has brought with him a Canadian man and Elias Rolfe, who's been able to give you 16 points per contest. And though Elijah Fisher was previously at Texas Tech, he's also from the country of Canada as well. He's been able to give the team 16 points per game, so I guess you could say that they're on the A team. And so you say A to the fact that you've got Lamar Washington giving you about 6 assists, a steal per contest. But again, the team is shooting 28.7% from three-point range. That's a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. Team isn't awful on the glass. They're a top 200 team with regards to rebound percentage. You've been able to have Washington give you about 5 rebounds per game. Jazz Gardner at 7 foot size, he's able to give you 4 boards per contest. Doesn't really give you a lot in terms of being able to protect the rim, though. And this is a Portland team that I do think that the shiftiness of Austin Rapp, a 6'10" big man that's shooting 36.5% from 3, 14 points per contest, is going to really sully what the Pacific Tigers are looking to do in this one. Now it's a Portland team that pretty much all their metrics are bad. I wish I could put it any other way. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 37% from three-point range. They shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. There's something positive for you, but in terms of turnovers per game, they're turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest. They're outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. They're outside the top 320 in terms of generating turnovers as well, but you do have Max McKinnon, who's got some versatility. He's been able to supply the team with 10 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. Vukasa Masic throws in their 9 points, 3 assists. With Masic, he's been only shooting about 31% from three-point range, but you've been able to get a little bit more from the outside out of McKinnon, who's shooting about 35.5% from three-point range. And now you've got Jeremiah Balsager-Webb, who's been shooting 70% from three-point range. Here's a secret. That's because he's won 7 to 10 from three-point range, but he gives you a nice 6'10", 7 foot size with about 5 points, pair of rebounds per game. And Chris Austin, after he was a starter for the team a few seasons ago, he still is. He just hasn't given you too much. That said, in a battle of two sad teams, I do think that Portland, who's been able to do a nice job of not allowing teams to get second and third chances, does just enough to be able to get the job done. In Pacific is going to have open looks from 3. I just don't think that they bury them. I set my line at 2. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 with Portland, and set my total 144. Again, I just don't think that both of these teams do their part with regards to the total. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay with Portland. 845, 846 on the betting board. San Diego is playing us to Washington State. Washington State, a 12.5 point road favorite. Total on this game is 153, and with Washington State, did set them as a favorite of 12 points. I'm going to be willing to take 12.5 plus here with San Diego. San Diego coming off of getting blowtorched by north of 40 points a few nights ago by St. Mary's. That was a butt kicking for the ages, and for San Diego, should be seeing some three-point shooting progression here. They're shooting 27.5% from 3. That's a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. KJ Bradley has been rock solid. 15.5 points, 3.5 assists, 1.8 steals per contest. He shoots 30.1% from 3, and he's like one of 2 guys that has actually seen minutes this year that's shooting above 30% from 3. Tony Duckett has shot 39.5% from three-point range as well, but I mean, less than tremendous there. This team isn't the world's worst on the glass. They're outside the top 275, but they give you some sort of an effort with Santiago Triot along with Stephen Jamerson, the second, being able to combine for about 15.5 rebounds per game. Both give you between about 9 to 9.5 points per game. And for Washington State, I mean, this is a team that has been dealing with the Cedric Howard injury all season long. I believe he's actually out for the rest of the season. But that said, this has been a team that has been able to persevere despite that. You've got guys like Ethan Price and Dan Erickstrup. Both of these guys are 6'10". Both of these guys give you 12.5 points per contest and pop it from 3-point range. With Mr. Price, he's been able to shoot 39% from 3. Erickstrup, 39.2% from 3-point range. But you do have some deficiencies with regards to this Washington State team, mainly the fact that they are in the top 20 nationally in terms of turnovers per game, and not in a positive way. They are turning the ball over about 15.5 times per game. This has been a team that has been in the top 175 with regards to a rebound rate. You've got Nate Calmezzi in the backcourt, who's been able to give you 16.5 points, 4.5 assists, but he only shoots about 26.5% from 3-point range. LaJuan Watts has been able to shoot about 35% from the outside, 14 points per game, but this is also a unit that they've given up a lot on the interior. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and without brutally dreadful San Diego's been from 3-point range, they've had to abandon ship on taking too many threes. So I do think that San Diego does just enough on the inside to be able to hold in this game. Set my line at a 12, so we'll take 12.5 plus. I did set my total at 148. I just flat out don't think that San Diego, despite Washington State being an up-tempo team, is really going to be popping in a lot from 3 and does their part with this total. So in on the under and at north of 12, taking those points with San Diego. 847, 848 on the betting board. Pepperdine is playing us to San Francisco. The Dons of San Francisco are a 5 to 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game 147.5, and with the Dons, I set them as a 5.5 point favorite, so good to be one to lay the 5. San Francisco's defense has certainly gone downward a little bit, but they're still a top 75 mark in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've got Marcus Williams in the backcourt, who's been able to shoot north of 43% from 3-point range, giving you 14 plus points per contest. He's able to dole out a little bit north of 4 assists per game as well, and it's a San Francisco team that, despite the fact that they don't have really anyone that gives you north of 6 assists per contest, they're a top 150 unit in terms of their overall rebound rate, and that's more than what we can say for Pepperdine. Pepperdine, they're right now about 174th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. I like the way that Pepperdine is starting to come together. Dave Schilling, he comes on over from the East Coast. He's been able to bring in quite a bit of solid guard play, and additionally, he's been able to bring in Stefan Torvik, who at 6'8" has been very versatile. 19.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots north of 41% from 3-point range, but the real key for this team is Mo Odom. He's been able to give you 7.5 assists, so about 2.3 turnovers per game, shoots 39% from 3-point range, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. Boubacar Koulibaly has been able to give you about 2 blocks, 7 rebounds per game, but outside of your main starting 6 for this team as starting 5, and you've got a 6-man in Jackson Oliveira who's able to give you 8 points per contest. You really don't get anything out of anyone else, so that's a little bit of an issue for this team. And then on the flip side, you've got a San Francisco unit that they do have quite a bit more depth. I've been really liking what I've been seeing out of the transfer from USC and Malik Thomas, who's been able to supply 20.5 points per contest since the beginning of the month of December, north of 22 points per game, shoots 40% from 3-point range. Tyrone Riley, he's able to give you versatility, 10 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 37% from 3-point range. And then Carlton Lindgard is a true 7-footer, only gives you about 4 boards per contest, but he's able to give you a block, he's able to give you some versatility, and he's able to pop it from 3-point range as well. San Francisco is a top 125 unit in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and for the San Francisco team, they are going to need to have that be put to the test, because Pepperdine has been shooting north of 37% from 3-point range at home, outside 31% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court environment. And to the credit of Pepperdine, they allow opponents to shoot only about 27.5% from 3-point range at home. So this is a game where I did set my total at 143.5 as a result, in on the under, and with San Francisco willing to lay up to 5 with them. 849, 850 on the betting board. You got Cal State Fullerton, and they're on the road against UC Irvine. Zot. The Anteaters are between a 20.5 to a 21 point favorite, and your total on this game, it is a 135.5 to a 136. And I said Irvine is a 24.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay it. This Cal State Fullerton team is just bad. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They have a no point guard to speak of whatsoever. There's not a single guy on the roster right now that's giving you north of 1.6 assists per contest. It's just all rudderless isolation at this point. Like, I have no other way of explaining it. They can't take threes, as they're in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Now, the one thing that they have going for them, they actually shoot 78% at the free throw line. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. You should have your top 3 scorers: Kobe Young, Donovan Ode, Mikey Squire. They all are able to give you at least 77.5% free throw shooting, but Ode is the only guy that gives you north of 8.5 points per contest, 13 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Kobe Young is able to throw in there about 5.5 rebounds per game. But these top 3 scorers, lone 3 guys on the roster that give you north of 3 rebounds per game. They literally have one guy that shoots above 28.5% from three-point range. Davis Bynum, who's been missing for about 7 games this year, averages 5.5 points. He shoots 37.5% from three-point range. So, yeah, this is rough. And now you have to go up against an Irvine team that is in the top 30 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. Bent Lycan along with Devin Tillis are just monsters down low. They're combining for about 16.5 rebounds per game, a combined 29 points per game. And Lycan, he had 7 feet tall, is shooting 52% from three-point range. Tillis shoots 38% from three-point range. As a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers for UC Irvine all shoot at least 37.5% from three-point range, as they all give you double figures. Now, lone kryptonite for this team, it has been an Irvine team that has been outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. They do turn the ball over 13 times per game, but they do a good job defending the interior. They do a good job defending the three-point line. They don't put you on the free throw line. They allow the 4th fewest amount of free throw attempts per game of any team in all of college basketball. I think that this is going to be a dump trucking as a result. I do recognize that there's been a little bit of an injury to Andre Henry in the backcourt for Irvine, but they should be able to persevere and just power their way to victory. I did set my line at a 132.5 with regards to the total. I just don't think that Fullerton does their part with this total, so I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 24 here with Irvine. 851, 852 on the betting board. Seattle is playing up to Utah Tech, and Utah Tech is an underdog of 12 points. Your total on this game between 141 to a 142, and with Seattle, I set them as a 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. For Utah Tech, they've gotten a little bit better recently. Beyond Riley returning to the fold after he was missing for some time. That's big because he leads the way in so many regards for this team. 14.5 points, 8 boards, 2 assists. Been able to shoot about 35% from three-point range, and Noah Gonsalves has been able to shoot 38% from the outside, but this is a Utah Tech team that has been less than tremendous down low. Their rebound rate is outside the top 250 nationally. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They don't necessarily generate a ton of turnovers themselves, and they're relying upon Tennessee Rainwater for versatility. That is his actual name. First name Tennessee, last name Rainwater. 7 points, 3.5 boards. He shoots about 30% from three-point range. Akeem Bird is giving you a little bit of something from the outside as well, 34% three-point shooter. But on the flip side, I do think that Seattle going to be able to control this game with having what they have now with Matthew Alexander Moncrief. He was out for a little bit of time due to injury. His first game back, they knock off Washington for the first time since they reclassified to the Division I level. 15.5 points, 11 boards, steal per contest. Not going to light you up from three-point range. And this is a Seattle team that as a whole, they only shoot about 34.5% from three-point range, but you've been able to have Brandon Maldonado shoot about 36.5% from three. You've got a lot of guys that just contribute around 9 to 11.5 points per contest, with Maldonado, Paris Dawson, Malik Harrington, John Crisophilia. So it is one of those teams that, even though they've got Moncrief as a main headline guy, it is a little bit more Holzger than the sum of its parts. You've been able to have Horan Don be able to give you a little bit of something. He comes on over from overseas. He's got some good versatility, gives you nearly a block per contest. So I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. They've been without Kobe Williamson throughout much of the season, but still is a pretty rock-solid defense. This has been a team that's been really giving it up from the inside, though. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they've been able to do a nice job of locking it down there as they're allowing opponents to shoot actually 35% from three-point range at home, compared to about 33.5% away from them. But this is also a Utah Tech team that they shoot 38.5% from three-point range at home, 28% when they're away from home. And I do think that Seattle is starting to find their sea legs with regards to their defense. They were dealing with some injuries towards the beginning part of the season. This is traditionally a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That has not necessarily come to the forefront thus far this season, but you take a look at the Seattle team and what they've been able to do here in conference play. They have given up now 71 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, and I do think that they're going to be able to hold this thing down and be able to give you a relatively good defensive effort. I did set my total at a 143.5, so I'm going to be in on this total over just because I do think that Utah Tech is going to give up quite a bit from the outside, and Seattle starting to be able to get a little bit more out of Matthew Alexander Moncrief, so I'm in on that over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Seattle, 853, 854 on the betting board. Long Beach State plays us at UC San Diego. So UC San Diego, 15 to 15.5 point favorites, 136 after 137 is your total, and with old San Diego, I set them as an 11.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to take the points with Long Beach State. Long Beach State got you off to a tumultuous first month of the season. You can tell that all the pieces were moving, and you can tell that there was just no consistency whatsoever with this team. But it feels like under Chris Acker, they're starting to find a little bit of something. They took a pair of rough losses towards the beginning part of the new year against Cal State Bakersfield and UC Riverside, but they were able to get up off the mat, looked very good in their game against UC Davis. As this has been an offense that has been able to hum a little bit more recently, as they're shooting 36% 46% from three-point range overall for the season. That's a top 100 mark in the country. And Devin Askew, he's a guy that's able to take over a game. 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots 38.5% from three-point range, albeit he turns the ball over about 3.5 times per game, and this is a Long Beach State team that's well outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. On the flip side, you do go up against a UC San Diego team that, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they've been a top 15 team in all of college basketball. Well, they themselves do a really good job of taking care of it. They're one of the top 15 teams in the country in terms of ball security. They don't necessarily do a beastly job on the glass. Now, they don't allow you to get second chance opportunities, but they themselves are not going to pull in a lot of offensive rebounds. Iona Tiat Jones has been one of your main men down low. He and Norden Kopic have been able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game. Tiat Jones, your main scorer, 15 points, steal per contest. Doesn't really pop it for three, but Tyler McGee does. He shoots 42.5% from three-point range. Team as a whole is shooting about 34.5% from three-point range, but they take more three-point shots rather than two-point shots. Meanwhile, they themselves encourage you to take quite a few threes, and that's the one issue that you do have with this UC San Diego team. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 36% from three-point range or outside the top 300 with that regard. So with Long Beach State having a forte of being able to shoot it from three-point range, having some of these guys like a Cam Martin who's been able to give you 8.5 points per contest, currently shooting 49% from three-point range. Should see a little bit of regression there. Cam Denson shooting north of 40% for three. That'll be just enough for Long Beach State to stay lively in this game. Set my total 135.5, so it's a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take those points, and I'm in on this total under as well. San Diego, well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. Long Beach State really throttled down their tempo as well. 855, 856 on the betting board. UC Davis on the road against Cal Poly. Cal Poly is a favorite of 3.5 points, so it's between 154.5 to 155.5, and with Cal Poly, I did set them as a favorite in this spot of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 3.5 to 4. It is a Cal Poly unit that certainly has been turning the ball over a little bit too much. They are outside the top 300 in terms of ball security, but so is this UC Davis team. Now, UC Davis, a top 25 team in the country in terms of generating turnovers as well, but UC Davis just not doing a great job on the glass. They're 12th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. This is a Cal Poly team that they leave a lot to be desired on the glass as well, about 284th, but in their home games, Cal Poly, a little bit north of a 50% rebound percentage. Now, UC Davis is going to have, in my opinion, the top player in this game, and that'd be Ty Johnson. Johnson has been able to give this team 20.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists, but he only shoots 18% from three-point range. You've got a few ancillary pieces like Connor Sylvia along with Leo DeBrule, who have both been able to give you between 9.5 to 10 points per contest. They both combine to shoot about 30.5% for three, and they combine to shoot 90% at the free throw line as well, but the 15 turnovers per game for this UC Davis team, that has been quite costly. Now, this is also a UC Davis team that they do an okay job locking down from three-point range. They allow you to shoot just 32% from three-point range, but this is a Cal Poly team that I think that they're going to be able to do a nice job early by committee of being able to find a way to bust through on this defense. As Cal Poly, a top 10 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Davis well outside the top 225, but Owen Kuntz, Jaron Hyder, these guys have been able to combine for about 32.5 points per game. Hyder has been your main facilitator with about 3.5 assists per game, but I like what I'm seeing out of Mac Rinker. He's saying 6'5", gives you about 5 boards, 9.5 points, 3 assists per contest. Not a guy that's going to go into inferno mode from three-point range, but Isaac Jessup shoots 40% from three-point range. It's a Cal Poly team that they've been allowing you to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range, but you can tell that this is one of those teams that they sort of feed off of their home crowd, as Cal Poly, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, checking in 316th in all of college basketball, but they've been able to play a little bit better when they've been at home. UC Davis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, we're around about 115th, but I do think that just the overall breakneck pace of these Cal Poly games, I do think that's going to throw UC Davis for a little bit of a loop, and I do think that Cal Poly gets the job done and they get their tempo cranked up. I did set my total at a 155. Right now I'm seeing between 154 to 155. I'm looking at that 154 over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Cal Poly. At 57, 858 on the betting board, Loyola Marymount plays us to Santa Clara. Santa Clara is a road favorite of 5.5 points, so it's between 146.5 to 147, and I did set my total at a 147. Right now I'm going to be willing to take that 146.5 over, even though you've got a Loyola Marymount that's well outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. This Santa Clara team has really been able to get things humming, top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for Loyola Marymount, thought that they'd be a little bit better than 195th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, only giving up about 3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot court setting, and this has been a Santa Clara team that they themselves have been giving it up a little bit more defensively. Santa Clara outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but with the Santa Clara team, I do think that they're going to be able to win the battle down low just because you've got so much sheer size on this team. Christoph Tilley is a true 7-footer that's only giving you about 4.5 rebounds per game, but he's been able to pop it a little bit more from three-point range. for Santa Clara overall in terms of rebound rate this far this season. They're a little bit diminished from where I thought they would be, but they're still 59th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for this Loyola Marymount team, right now they're checking in more in that neighborhood of about 260th in the country, as Alex Merkveld has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and I absolutely love what they've been able to get in the front court from Javon Porter. Porter, all sorts of versatility. He's of relation to Michael Porter, 13.5 points, 7.5 boards, 2.5 assists from three-point range. He's been shooting in that neighborhood about 31% from three, and Caleb Stone-Carwell, he shoots 39% from the outside. Team only turns the ball over about 11.5 times per game. They don't really put any pressure on you whatsoever, though. This team has only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per game. One thing I will say, they have the lowest amount of their shots blocked per game of any team in all of college basketball, so they're getting clean looks. They're just really not knocking them down, and they just don't generate a whole heck of a lot of second and third chances. Fewer than 9 offensive rebounds per game. That is a bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball. And then for Santa Clara, love what Adama Ball is able to give you in the backcourt. 6'6", a little bit of a combo player. He has supplied the team with 2.5 assists, 13.5 points per game. It is a team that as a whole, they shoot about 35% from three-point range, and it's a Santa Clara team that, with regards to defense, they've been hit or miss with regards to guarding inside the arc, but their outside shooting defense, they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from three-point range. That's been a top 150 mark in the country, and all of a sudden, Carlos Stewart is starting to get going as well. He, 2 seasons ago, was his team's top scorer. Last year, he was over at LSU and had a forgettable year over at LSU, and then got off to a little bit of a slow start this season, but now 13-plus points in 3 out of the last 4 games. He's been able to get to 9-plus points in all but 1 out of the team's last 13 games, so he's really been able to pick it up after he was a little bit stagnant to begin the season, now shooting about 37.5% from three-point range, and with this Loyola Marymount team, giving you a lot of open looks from three-point range. This is a Loyola Marymount team that on the road has been completely different than they have been at home. For Loyola Marymount, at home, they are shooting about 37% from three. On the road, less than 28% from three-point range. And for the Mount, they allow you on the road to shoot 36% from three. That goes down to about 30.5% from three-point range at home. So it's an interesting little scenario. I did set my total at a 147 as a result. Right now, seeing that 146.5, it's a max I'm willing to go over on, but I'm willing to go over. And Loyola Marymount, they've just been playing so much better at home. On the road, this is a team that I'm not willing to back, but I do think that here with the 5.5, it's just gone a little bit too far. At a 5+, I'm willing to take those points with Loyola Marymount, and I'm in on this total over as well. 859, 860 on the betting board. Oregon State is playing us to Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a 9 to 9.5 point road favorite. Totals between 150.5 to 151.5. So Gonzaga is a 9-point favorite. At 9.5, I'm willing to take the points with Oregon State. This Oregon State team is one that really feeds off of their home crowd as well, and it's just really sinking tough to be able to get up to Corvallis in general. I actually used to work for the official flagship station of the Oregon Ducks. Not easy travel getting out to Corvallis. As a result, Oregon State, who's 29th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're giving up about 15.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. But Gonzaga's defense has come along for the ride as well. This is a team that's a top 30 unit in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for this Gonzaga team, it's not as if they're playing at like warp speed or anything like that. Oregon State is back to playing low and slow. Oregon State is 308th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but for this Gonzaga team, 43rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But if you take out the overtime sessions, as they played a few overtime games, remember that game against Kentucky, they'd be more around about 60th or so that's something to be taking a look at for Gonzaga. They also haven't necessarily shot it amazingly from three-point range. Kaylee Battle has been able to give you 13+ points per contest, and Ryan Emmert has an assist-to-turnover ratio that's well north of 3.5. He's been able to do a very nice job of being able to flow good, clean offense, giving you about 11.5 points, 9.5 assists per contest, but they've really been able to do their work with regards to the low post and what Graham Ike has been able to provide on the glass, as he was very inconsistent to begin the season, but now he's putting up double-doubles on the regular, 16.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. You've also been able to have Braden Huff be able to give you about 11 points per contest, so he hasn't been too much of a three-point shooter either. Graham Ike actually has your best three-point shooting percentage along with Nolan Hickman on the team. Both shoot about 44% from the outside, but on the flip side, you do have a Oregon State team that has Michael Rata providing a lot of versatility at 6'9", 16.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's been able to shoot 36% from three. Nate Kings continues to shoot 49.5% from three. Do think that we're going to see that go downward just a little bit, but Oregon State is allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from three-point range. Oregon State has been a top 50 team with regards to rebound rate as well. I do think that Gonzaga is a superior team. They're going to show that in this game, but both of these teams are actually very similar. Only thing is, you've got a Gonzaga team that plays a whole heck of a lot more up-tempo than Oregon State, but both of these teams built a little bit more through their big men and their defense this year, along with just good, clean offense, as DeMarco Minor has been very major major for this Oregon State team. Not too much of a score, but 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists, 1.7 steals per contest. So circumstance where I did set my line at a 9. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Oregon State and make my total 147 and on the under. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 861, 862. Cal State Northridge. CSUN is on the road against Hawaii. Hawaii is a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points on the island. Total on this game, it is 147.5. Wrote this one up. I'm going to be willing to take CSUN with the points, though. I like them outright on the money line in this game. I do think that for CSUN, they're going to be able to win the battle down low. They're a top 25 unit in all of college basketball with regards to rebound percentage. This is a Hawaii team that as well, they just haven't shot it well from three-point range. I will say, it just feels like the San Sheriff Center is not a good three-point shooting environment whatsoever because their opponents also don't shoot it well from three-point range. Every year we watch a Diamond Head Classic, we watch a ton of bricks being shot up in those games, but I mean, that said, this is a CSUN team that has been able to do a really good job of hunkering down, locking down with their defense, 70th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Hawaii, their three-point shooting percentage at home is 328th. Now, this is a Hawaii team that as well is a top 60 team with regards to their rebound percentage, as you've had Tanner Christensen come in. He's been able to supply the team with north of 7 rebounds per game. Jerome Palm is another guy with size. He doesn't necessarily see a ton of minutes, but when he's out there, he's able to give you a few boards. He's able to give you a block per contest, and Gatis Nemishka has been the main guy. 14.5 points, 7 boards. He's shooting about 36.5% from three-point range, but this is a Hawaii team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and yet they turn the ball over 12.5 times per game, and they don't put any pressure on you. And that's a big thing for this Cal State Northridge team, because the main kryptonite of this Northridge team, they don't do a great job of being able to take care of the ball. They turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest, outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. Hawaii is outside the top 330 in terms of generating turnovers. This is a CSUN team that they're not great, they're not terrible from three-point range, but you do have Marcus Adams along Keontae Jones, who are so versatile. Jones is shooting 46.5% from 3, 9 boards, 4 assists, 1.9 steals, 1.7 blocks, 13 points per game, and then Adams, 15 points, 5 boards, 40% three-point shooter. I think that they're going to be able to blow them away, and I do think that they find a way to get the job done in the spot with PJ Fuller adding in there a little bit of facilitation with 3.5 assists, right around 9 points per game. CSUN looking to run it and gun it, top 75 team with regards to total possessions per game. Hawaii well outside the top 250, so a little bit of a tempo war here. Did set my total 144.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm in on CSUN on the money line. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-559, 306-560. Maine hopes to not get Maine. They're on the road against NJIT. NJIT, a home underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. Draw this game is 130.5 to 131.5. Keep in mind, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, tip time, and I made Maine a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. 2 seasons ago, Kellen Tynes led all of college basketball in steals per game, and he might do so once again this year. This guy's been able to supply north of 3.4 steals per contest. It is a Maine team that still has their deficiencies with regards to their three-point shooting, but it's gotten better this year. They're still shooting about 34.5% from three-point with one AJ Lopez shooting 43% from three-point with Christopher Mantis shooting 42.5% from the outside. Tynes himself shoots less than 30% from three, but supplies the team with about 13 points per contest, and he's the main facilitator. He gives out 5 assists per game. Jaden Clayton has been able to throw in their 4 assists per contest, be able to free up Mantis and AJ Clayton, who have been able to do a nice job in tandem of being able to give you some scoring. Now down low is where this team lacks. You've only got one guy on the roster that really gives you north of 3.5 rebounds per game. That'd be Keon Burns, who gives you 11 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, but this is an NJIT team that is just absolutely gutted at this point. For NJIT, they're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they actually do a nice job of guarding the three-point arc there, allowing opponents to shoot just hardly over 30% from three-point range, but on the interior, they're well outside the top 175 with that regard. They're outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they've been dealing with injuries all season long. As now, they've been dealing with one to Tyreek Francis. Francis is their do-it-all guy who's able to give you 3.5 assists, 4 boards, 16.5 points per game. We have not seen him since early December, and that means that you got 2 guys who are able to average double figures, Sebastian Robinson and Tim Moore. These 2 guys have been able to combine for about 24.5 points per contest. Moore gives you 6.5 rebounds per game, but you've only got 2 guys on the roster. They give you north of 4.1 rebounds per game. They've had Jake Goldberg being in and out of the fold for this team as well. The team as a whole, they're shooting less than 30% from three-point range, and Francis was your main three-point shooter at about 32%, so it's not great to say the least with NJIT. This is a team that's went straight down the toilet bowl, and for this NJIT team, this is a bunch that has been able to exceed the 70-point plateau against a Division I opponent just once. thus far this season. Defense has actually been a little bit better, but still not necessarily efficient because they're outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Maine is a team that really slows it down well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game as well. So one of these circumstances where I did set my total at 126.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 10 with Maine 306.561, 306.562. UMBC plays us New Hampshire. New Hampshire is an underdog of 13.5 to 14 points. Total on this game is 152. Did set my total at 155.5. I'm going to be in on this total over, and with New Hampshire, I did set them as an underdog of 13.5 points. At the 14, that's actually my buy point on them. It's a New Hampshire team that their metrics are rough. They are outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 275 with regards to rebound percentage, but all of a sudden, you've had from absolutely nowhere whatsoever, Giancarlo Bastoni come in for the last 3 or so games and give this team 12 points per contest. He did not play at all prior to the start of the new year, and for that matter, he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury the last 2 games as well, but he's been able to give this team a little bit of a spark of life. I have no idea where this has come from, but there you go there. But you've got Sammy Pacisis along with Anthony McComb as well, who will be able to combine for in that neighborhood about 27.5 points per contest. Pacisis is your main facilitator. He's been able to give out about 3 assists per contest, especially with Rex Sutherland being injured and being in and out of the fold for the team. It's Trey Woodyard, the lone guy that gave you north of 3 points per contest from a season ago. He's been dealing with an injury as well, so it's been all sorts of brutal for this team. And for New Hampshire, this has been a squad that has been okay at being able to guard the 3-point line. They allow opponents to shoot less than 33% from 3-point range, so that's a little bit of a triumph for them. But for this UMBC team, they themselves are all sorts of brutal with regards to their defense. They're well outside the top 260 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They have been good at being able to guard the outside in terms of their interior defense outside the top 220 with this regard. They're a team that has been able to generate about 13.5 to 14 turnovers per contest, so to their credit, they've been a top 150 unit with that regard. They're completely built around their backcourt, though. Bryce Johnson has supplied 17 points, shooting 36% from 3-point. Marcus Banks shoots 43% from the outside, 14.5 points per contest. Really, the lone guy that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game is Josh Oduwundu, who comes over from the Ivy League. He's been able to supply about 5.5 rebounds per game, so as a result, this team's rebound rate is outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. They're one of the worst teams at being able to generate a second chance, so I do think that you're going to have a game that's just going to be gunned up tempo. New Hampshire last year, one of the fastest teams in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They've been throttled back just by the fact that they lost everything from a season ago, but still a relatively mid-tempo team. Meanwhile, with UMBC in terms of total possessions per game, this is a unit that is in the top 50 nationally, and when they're away from home, they actually are like a top 10 team, so they actually slow down a little bit more at home. But that said, I do think that you're going to get a up and down game in this one. Set my total 155.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take 14 plus here with New Hampshire. 306.563, 306.564. Bryant is on the road against Albany. Albany is a home underdog of 3 points. So on this game between 158.5 to 159.5. Set my total 161.5. I'm in on the over. Bryant once again just absolutely gunning it for all mankind. Meanwhile, Albany is actually slowed down a little bit with regards to their tempo. They're about 155th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Bryant is 7th, and when Bryant is in a road or neutral court venue, they get even faster, as right now they are number 5, I believe, in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game away from home, and the other teams are above them, all played like harebrained triple overtime games and things like that. But this is a Bryant team that is bringing sexy back, as they've got Earl Timberlake, who's been able to give you 16 points, 8 boards, 4.5 assists per contest, and scanning a little bit from the outside this year as well, shooting 37.5% from 3. It's a Bryant team that's a top 100 team, shooting about 36% from 3-point range. Rafael Pinzon has been the big reason why. Comes over from the Big East, 17.5 points, shooting 48% from 3-point range among qualifying players, a top 25 mark that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Now, Bryant does turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest. That's what's going to happen when you play so up-tempo, and they've left something to be desired on the offensive glass. They're outside the top 200 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, which I think is going to be able to help Albany be able to hold in this game, and as a matter of fact, win this game outright. I said Albany as a 1.5 point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line, as this is an Albany team that has been able to find quite a bit in the backcourt with having Amari Marshall along with DeMar Langford be able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. Langford gives you absolutely nothing from the outside, but you've also been able to get some good production out of Brian Joshua, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest with Albany. This has been a team that has been very crafty in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and while you do have a bunch in Albany that really doesn't have that one featured rebounder, Justin Neely is right now your top rebounder, only guy that gives you north of 5 boards per contest. He stands right around about 6'5" or so. Also in their 6.5 rebounds per game. They're a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of missed shots that do not result in an offensive rebound. They do not allow you to get a second and third chance on the glass. It is a little bit of a deeper team with Bryant, with Connor Withers being able to give you 8+ points per contest, but I do like the way that Albany has been able to mix and shake as well, even though Cooper Klonzich, who comes over from St. Joe's, has been a little bit of disappointment. 8 points, 4.5 rebounds per game out of 6'8" combo player, but this team has done a nice job being able to take care of the ball, only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, while they do a nice job of generating those turnovers. I do like Albany in this spot outright on the money line as a result, and set my total 161.5. I do think that this game is going to be gunned up and down, so in on the over and in on the money line of Albany. 3 of 6, 565, 3 of 6, 566. It is a Lipscomb on the road against Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a home underdog of 16 points still on this game, between 146.5 to 147. Set my line at 15. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bellarmine. Lipscomb just has not been the team from 3-point range I thought that they were going to be. They bring back Jacob Onyesevich, the gentleman from the great state of Wisconsin. I believe he's from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. He's been able to give you in that neighborhood about 16 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. But I mean, with him coming back, it's led to a team that was really good from 3-point range. Now shooting about 32.5% from 3. Now Bellarmine gives it up from 3. Bottom 5 team in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they themselves bomb it at about 33.5% from 3-point range. Billy Smith, Jack Korzinski, these are two guys that combine to shoot about 37.5% from the outside. They're combining for about 29.5 points per game. Now you have a rebounding issue for this team, as Curtis Huff is the lone guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and this team is getting decimated with turnovers. Bellarmine outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, and yet they are outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 275 in terms of ball control, and this team shoots really well at the free throw line. They're a top 20 team with regards to free throw shooting percentage at 79.2%. Problem is they're in the bottom 30 in terms of free throw attempts per game, so that's a little bit of an issue, especially when you're about 350th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. But again, this Lipscomb team, who I thought was going to be really good on offense, they've just been a little bit more muted this season. You've got Josiah Boom Boom Powell along with Will Pruitt, who both been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. It's a team that they keep you off the free throw line, as they're in the top 10 nationally in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed per game. Joe Anderson has been able to give you about 35.5% 3-point shooting. He's been able to supply 9 points per contest, but we've seen this Lipscomb defense begin to diminish just a little bit. They take that bad loss against Queens NC where they give up 75 points there, so you've had a little bit of things pop up with this Lipscomb team, but I do think that Bellarmine does just enough to hold in there. I set my line at a 15, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bellarmine, and for this Lipscomb team, still a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Do think that they bounce back a little bit more here, so in on the under and the points with Bellarmine. 3 of 6, 567, 3 of 6, 568. Florida Gulf Coast plays us to West Georgia. West Georgia is an underdog of 13 to 13.5 points. 142.5 to 143.5 is your total. And with regards to Florida Gulf Coast, I did set this line at a 13. So 13.5 is my buy point on West Georgia. With West Georgia, it's been an unsavory year for them. They're outside the top 275 in darn near every category in all of college basketball. But Sheldon Williams-Dryden, the gentleman from Wisconsin, has come in, giving you 18 points, 7.5 boards per contest. Like his versatility, he's actually now shooting 40% from 3, albeit he hasn't taken a lot of threes this far this season, but good sign for the team as he shoots north of 60% from the floor. It is a West Georgia team that, to their credit, they've done a nice job of not giving up a lot of second chances. Problem is, a lot of teams knock down their first chances. This team is outside the top 325 in terms of opponents' field goal shooting percentage. They don't find a way to be able to get to the free throw line, and when they do get to the free throw line, they shoot 65.3% while they're there. Less than tremendous, but Malcolm Noel has been able to give the team 39.5% three-point shooting. He's been able to supply them with 8 points per contest, has been in and out of the lineup all season long, so that has really been ailing them, but he's returned in the last few games. He's been able to give the team at least 7 points in each of the last 5 games that he's been out there on the floor for, so that's been a nice little bit of shot in the arm. And then for this Dunk City team, they're back outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. And for Florida Gulf Coast, it's not like their backcourt has been overly amazing. I like what they're able to get down low out of Keyshawn Kellman. He was missing for a little bit of time this year, but 12 points, 7 boards. He's able to give you a bit over a block per contest. DeLeon Johnson has been the main ringleader with regards to this backcourt, 35.5% three-point shooter, 13.5 points per game, and then Xavier McLean has been able to shoot about 40.5% from three-point range. But it's a Florida Gulf Coast team that's outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're very average in terms of a lot of their overall offensive metrics, except for the fact that they don't find a way to get to the free throw line themselves. They're outside the top 350 in terms of free throw attempts per game. This has been a unit that just has been in general fouling a lot, as well as they are a team that in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis are outside the top 275 with that regard as well. And with this team also being outside the top 200 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, I think that West Georgia is going to be able to hold in there. Did set my total at a 137, so circumstance where I'm going to be in on this total under, and I'm in on the points with West Georgia. 365-69, 365-70. It is North Florida playing against Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas underdogs have 10 points. Total on this game it's 157 after 158. I should have probably written this one up, but the extra games did not get listed on the board until later on. I said North Florida is a 17.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. This Central Arkansas team is not good. Central Arkansas is shooting less than 29% from three-point range. That is outside the top 340 in all of college basketball. Central Arkansas outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've actually done a halfway decent job down low, as they are a team that ranks at the top 150 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. As you've got Elias Cato, Michael Everbrau, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 10 rebounds per game. Everbrau gives you absolutely nothing offensively with 7 points per contest. Cato, 16.5 points per game, only shooting about 28.5% from three-point range. Lane Taylor shoots 33.5% from the outside. He's able to supply you with about 17.5 points per game. He's one of just 2 guys that actually sees minutes for the team that shoots above 28.5% from three-point range. So it is really not good on that front. And then when it comes to this North Florida team, they're a completely different offense when they're at home rather than on the road. On the road, North Florida has already pulled off some triumphs, by the way, as they knock off Georgia Tech and they knock off South Carolina on the road. But you can tell that this is just not the same team with regards to their overall three-point shooting percentage. It's a North Florida team that, by the way, takes more three-point shots than they do two-point shots. So they live and die by the three, but they shoot about 36% from distance at home, 33.2% in a road/neutral court setting. And for this North Florida team, you've got great size with this team, as well as you've got a lot of guys that stand right around about 6'7", like Liam Murphy, Nate Lateris, that have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest. Both of these guys have been able to shoot north of 37.5% for three, with Murphy shooting 43.5% for three-point range. And then you've had Josh Harris, who missed 2 games earlier in conference play due to injury. He's come back. He's given you 14.5 points, 6.5 boards. He shoots 46.5% from three-point range. And North Florida plays at a top 50 mark in terms of possessions per game, yet they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. Problem is they do shoot about 66.5% at the free throw line, and they do get a little bit bludgeoned on the glass. That said, this is a Central Arkansas team that's not going to be able to take advantage of the fact that this North Florida team has really been lackadaisical with regards to their three-point shooting defense. I do think that this is going to be an up-and-down game. Central Arkansas back in the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game themselves, and Central Arkansas not doing a good job of being able to guard the three-point arc, as Central Arkansas is right now allowing teams to shoot 37.3% from three-point range away from home. That's outside the top 320 nationally. So I did set my number at 165.5 with the total. I'm on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 17 here with North Florida. 365.71, 365.72. Sets in place also Queens NC. Queens NC is a 5 to 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game 155.5. I set Queens NC as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with sets, and it is a Queens NC team that's still outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. One thing that they've done a relatively okay job of is being able to guard the 3-point line. For Queens NC, this is a team that they allow you to shoot only about 32.5% from 3 points, while they themselves shoot about 34.5% from the outside. That's the top 125 mark in all of college basketball. But even though the Stetson team has been, shall we say, less than tremendous to say the least this season, there are some signs of brightness for the team, as you've got a guy, Malik Ellison, who's been able to headline the team with 2.5 assists, 16 points per contest, and is now shooting north of 43% from 3-point shots. Massey has been able to shoot 35% from 3. He throws in there about 11 points per contest. And Stetson as a whole, they're shooting about 34.5% from 3-point. What is big for Stetson is that they just cannot take care of the ball. They are outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. They're turning the ball over 14 times per contest. In terms of the rebound rate, this has been one of the most ghastly teams in all of college basketball, so Queens NC is certainly going to be able to have a leg up there. As for this Queens NC team, they've actually got one of the top shot blockers in all of college basketball. You've been able to get north of 3.5 blocks per game out of Malcolm Wilson. Doesn't give you a whole lot of offensively, 5 points, 5.8 rebounds per game, but for this Queens NC team as well, this has been a team that has not been able to knock down their free throws in a nip and tuck situation. They are 337th in the country, shooting 64.8% at the free throw line. This has been a team that's been able to do a relatively solid job knifing down low, top of 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so they've been able to hold up there. That said, I do think that with this Queens NC team and their 14 turnovers per game, that it's going to turn into a lot of sloppiness in this game. It is going to be very much, in my opinion, an up and down game. Stetson is looking to play a little bit more slowly, though. They have changed their tempo a little bit more, and they played a little bit faster this year. Queens NC, they're not quite as rambunctious and harebrained as they were a season ago, but still playing very up tempo in terms of total possessions per game in the top 70 with that regard. regard. So did set my total 155.5. Saw a few straight 155s out there. That's my max buy point on the overend with Stetson 4+. Won't take those points. 306.573, 306.574. North Alabama's on the road facing off against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville does find themselves as a home underdog of 1.5 to 2 points. 142.5 is your total line. I did set my total 142, so you're at the 142.5. That's my buy point on the under. As for North Alabama, they've really been able to do a much better job defensively this year than they have in the past, and you've actually got a Jacksonville team that is down in the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. They have sped themselves up from past years, but this is also a Jacksonville unit that they've been able to do a pretty rock solid job holding up down low in terms of hitting the glass, and they're going to need it because their three-point shooting defense is all over the place. Now, Jacksonville doing a good job of guarding the arc at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 26.8% from three-point range at home. That goes to 38.4% away from home. I do think that that's going to be ironing out a little bit as we go along the season, but North Alabama, they themselves have been a team that's been allowing teams to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range. The top 165 mark in all of college basketball there. I do think that North Alabama does find a way to get the job done. I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite because I still think that they have yet to unlock Daniel Ortiz. He was their top scorer 2 seasons ago, went over to UAB last year, has come back. He's given the team only about 11.2 points per contest this season. Three-point shooting percentage has been a little bit down this year, shooting only about 34.5% from three-point range, but if you look at how he's emerged recently, he's been able to give the team now 13 plus points in 5 out of the last 6 games, so it does feel like he's starting to find his sea legs once again, and this team has been able to get quite a bit down low out of Cornelius Williams. 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. This is a North Alabama team that does a much better job on the glass now than they did in past years, and they're also a top 20 team in terms of taking care of the ball, only about 9.5 turnovers per game, while they themselves have been a top 125 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and that's bad news for Jacksonville, a team that has been turning the ball over well north of 13 times per contest in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. This team is well outside the top 320 with that regard. Robert Gray is a nice go-to scorer, 16.5 points. He's able to shoot about 32% from three-point range, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists per game. That's for a Jacksonville team that, as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% from three-point range. Zimi Nakoji comes over from Dayton. He's got good 6'7" size, about 9 points, shoots 39% from three-point range, but you don't have the same rebounding that you've had in the past. Stephon Payne has been able to give you 6 boards, nearly a block per contest, but Jacksonville and their low post presence just not quite the same that it has been in past years. Still about a top 125 team with regards to rebound percentage, but with the way that they give it up from three-point range, I think that the home and road split is a little bit of an outlier. Do think that North Alabama finds a way to get the job done, especially Will Sosi starting to heat up a little bit more. Career 40% three-point shooter coming into the year, has shot less than 30% this season, and then you're able to throw in there as well Jakari Lane, who's been able to give you 16 points per contest. So circumstance where I did set my line at a 2, I'm willing to lay up to 1.5 with North Alabama, and at a 142.5 or higher, I'm in on this total under as well. 306.575, 306.576. You've got Vermont playing us at Binghamton. Binghamton a 9.5 to a 10-point underdog. Total on this game 127 to 127.5 with Vermont. Well, I made them a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Binghamton. This is a Binghamton team that has been able to lock a little bit more up with regards to their three-point shooting defense, and this has been a unit that has been able to get good versatility out of Timu Chenery. 14 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. It's a bunch that they're allowing opponents to shoot just 31% from three-point range. Now, Binghamton is not going to put you under any duress. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Gavin Walsh has been a top 20 rebounder in the country. 10.6 points, 10.4 boards per contest. Now, he doesn't shoot it amazing from 3, but Chenery shoots 40% from three-point range. Ben Callahan Gold has been as good as gold from the outside. 10 points, shoots about 40% from three-point range himself. As Binghamton as a collective, they've been a top 55 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Now, Binghamton needs to clean up the turnovers, return the ball over about 13.5 times per game, but this is not a Vermont team that's going to be going out there and seeking a bunch of turnovers. Vermont, always a team that throughout time has been a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not so much the case this season, and for Vermont, their overall three-point shooting percentage has went down from past season as well. This is a Vermont team that right now is shooting about 30.5% from three-point range. Does go up to about 34% at home, but that's right around about 300th in all of college basketball. Not what you'd expect from John Becker's team. They themselves have been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. They have been able to get quite a bit of production out of TJ Hurley, who's been able to give you 14 points per contest, but you've been without TJ Long for quite a while. He's come back. He's been able to give you about 11 points per game, but nobody down low is able to give you much of anything on the boards for this Vermont team. You got pretty much 4 separate guys that give you between 4.1 and 4.6 rebounds per game, with Eliu Filet, who's been able to give you about 4.6 boards leading the way, and he does give you about 2 blocks per contest as well. This is actually actually been a team that's been quite stout with regards to their block shot rate, but Vermont well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound percentage. This has been a Vermont team that's still been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the arc. Opponents are shooting from three-point range against them a little bit north of 31%, and Vermont, as they always are, significantly better at home rather than on the road, as for Vermont, they're allowing opponents from three-point range to shoot 21.4% at home compared to 37% away from home. That should iron out a little bit. Do think that you're in for a low-scoring slog. Both of these teams well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. Vermont outside the top 300, so semi-total 124.5 in on the under. And with Vermont, I could only make them a 6.5 point favorite, so taking those points with Binghamton, 3-6-5-77, 3-6-5-78. Longwood plays us a high point. High point helps to not be a low point as a 4-point road favorite. Total on this game, 154. I made Longwood the 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. This has been a high point team that has been one of the more efficient mid-major offenses in all of college basketball, back in the top 75 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Jocelyn Bodu, though, who last year was able to give the team 9+ rebounds per game, just diminished from what he's been in the past, as he's able to give you about 4.8 rebounds per game, but expected a little bit more from him on the interior this season. Kamani Hamilton has shown nice versatility, 13.5 points per contest. He's able to pop it at about 30% from three-point range, but it is a high point team that they just haven't been able to get the same production that they have in the past. Abdoulaye Thiam, only about 5.5 points per contest, shooting 25% from three, but Tamari Williams has been amazing, about 15 points per contest. He shoots 43% from 3 points. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that High Point just not necessarily playing at a high rate of speed either. 303rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Longwood, a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, and this is a Longwood team that they really hang their hat on defense, and they've been able to do a pretty rock-solid job of that thus far this season. They're a top 185 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They give up about 9.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. And for Longwood, they really don't have anyone that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, though they do get good versatility out of Michael Christmas, 4.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. He's been able to shoot about 33% from three. And Longwood, they do need to improve that 3-point shooting. They shoot at a clip of about 30.5% per three. That's outside the top 300 nationally, but in terms of rebound percentage, back in the top 75 nationally there. And this has been a team that's done a great job of getting to the free throw line. They're one of the best teams in all of college basketball at being able to draw fouls, and this is a high point team that they have been able to stay relatively disciplined. They're a top 150 team in terms of fewest fouls on a per possession basis, but I do think that Longwood going to be able to find a way in this one with the way that they generate turnovers. This has been a team that's ranked in the top 30 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, albeit many of them are dead ball turnovers, so typically they're not getting a lot of fast break opportunities. But Kyrell Luch, who's only giving you about 9 points, shot 23% for three, he's generating right around about a steal and a half per contest. Kobe Garland has been able to dole it out with about 4.5 assists. He gives you a little bit north of a steal per game. I think that these guys find a way to get the job done and be able to halt this high point offense just a skoch. I did set my total at a 145.5 as a result in on the under, and I do like Longwood outright on the money line, and we wrap things up with 3-6-5-79, 3-6-5-80. Austin Peay plays us East Carolina. East Carolina is a favorite on the road of 2.5 to 3 points, 141.5 to 142 is the total. Semi-total 135.5. Austin Peay has been playing as slow as all heck while being outside the top 270 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Austin Peay, in terms of total possessions per game, 255th in the nation. Now, East Carolina, they're looking to run and gun it. They're about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they do get a little bit slowed down on the road. For Austin Peay, where is the offense going to be coming from? That's the big question that you have to ask, because they've got one main man in LJ Thomas, who has been tremendous, as he's been able to supply this team with about 17 points. He shoots from 3-point range only about 22.5%, but throws in their 5 boards, 3 assists, a steal and a half per contest, and that's much of the issue for this Austin Peay team. They only shoot about 30.5% from three, and somehow, someway, they're even worse from inside the arc. Inside the arc, they're 350th in all of college basketball in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Now, this has been a team that has been able to do an okay job of being able to guard inside the arc, but they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from 3-point range. That's a big, giant issue for Austin Peay. Now, with that said, they have actually been much better at home rather than on the road, as Austin Peay allows you to shoot 29.3% from 3-point range at home, north of 38% away from them, but I do think that Eastern Kentucky, once again, going to be able to do a nice job of being able to generate some turnovers. This is a unit that has been able to have Devontae Blaine just do a little bit of everything for the team, as he's shipping in there 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. And then George Kimball III has been able to generate 3 steals per contest, top 10 mark in all of college basketball, all while shooting 35% from 3, 17.5 points per contest. Outside of Blaine and Kimball, you don't have a single other guy that gives you north of 8 points per game, but they do go relatively deep with regards to rotation. They've got pretty much 9 different guys playing at least 11 12 or so minutes per contest. That includes Yves Paul, who's been able to now give you about a block and a half per contest in 12.5 minutes per game, has been a really nice rim protector for this team. It is an East Carolina team that they do give it up a little bit from three-point range outside the top 200 with that regard, but this is also a team that in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, they've been a top 40 team in the country with that regard, so they should be able to win from within, generate quite a few turnovers. I do like Eastern Kentucky in this spot, made them a 5.5 point favorite, and did sell my total 135.5 with awesome piece and aptitude on offense, so in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Eastern Carolina. That'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @TNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. A big thanks once again to Tristan Freeman of Bucks and Brackets for joining me in live segment, and I'm with you guys every single day throughout the season on this podcast. I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.